I call the April 25th, 2022 order. It is 7 p.m. We are in conference room C of the Fisher Administration Building at 12121 West North Avenue. Ms. Newman, please call the roll.
Ms. Fraley? Here. Dr. Jessup Banger?
Here.
Mr. Meyer?
Here.
Ms. Neufeld? Here. Mr. Phillips?
Here.
Mr. Doman?
Here.
Ella Archambault? Here. Will Fleur?
Here.
Kate Pluta?
She is absent. Thank you. The first thing I'll note tonight is we do have a screen to my right in the back that will offer closed caption services for those that need them. So if that's something you need and want to adjust your seating, please go ahead and feel free. Second thing, if none of the board members object, I'd actually like to move the oath of office to our first item and then get into public comments that we have the entire board seated for public comments.
Agreed.
Okay. Ms. Fraley?
Are we going to have everybody come up?
Yeah, so Dr. Hoyt, come forward.
The administrative oath of office to our three new board members, Dr. Jessup Banger, Mr. Mike Meyer, and Dr. Jane Hope. Okay.
Just keep moving around.
Okay, so repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Meyer,
Having been elected or appointed to the office of school board member of the Wauwatosa School District,
have been elected or appointed to the office of school board member of the school district,
but have not yet entered upon the duties thereof,
but have not yet entered upon the duties thereof,
swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability.
and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. So we're going to sign your oath of office. Yeah.
But write your name on top, otherwise somebody will fill it in.
Thank you, Ms. Fraley, for doing that, and welcome to our new board member and to our newly re-elected board members. We will next move on to public comment on non-agenda items. Members of the Wauwatosa School Board value the input of students, parents, staff members, and community members. The board's regularly scheduled meetings provide an opportunity for opinions and concerns to be expressed publicly. The board values all comments and respectfully consider this input in decision-making. The board requests that individuals limit their comment on each item to 3 minutes. Following any comment, an individual board member may respond on the issue raised. However, it is not the intent of the public comment portion of the agenda for the board to enter into a debate with members of the community. Because non-agenda items are not publicly posted in advance, no action will be taken on public comment regarding non-agenda items this evening. We will start with those in the room. If you'd like to make a comment on non-agenda items, please come forward, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes. For those online, if you would like to make a comment during this portion of the meeting, please raise your hand and we will call on you after we go through those in the room. Is there anyone in the room who'd like to make a comment on non-agenda items? Please come forward to the mic, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Michael Long. My address is 2622 North Menominee River Parkway, Wauwatosa. I'm the parent of a sophomore at Wauwatosa West and an 8th grader at Whitman Middle School. On April 14th, I had an opportunity to attend a listening session at Wauwatosa West High School, hosted by Dr. Meads, where we talked about, with the group of 4 people, talked about the principal job at Wauwatosa West. And the following items were revealed during the this listening session. The first is that the teachers at West, some of them are afraid to teach because they're afraid of what's going on at the school. They don't feel safe. And while they're passionate about their jobs, they can't do their jobs because of the current environment at the school. The second item is that there's been a noticeable decline in student behavior expectations set by the school, and a reluctance to punish the bad actors out of fear of some form of retribution from the district office. Third, there's been a decline in the academic rigor at the school, and there's been a lack of leadership within the building. And these weren't the observations made by the 4 people that attended this listening session. These observations were made by Dr. Meads. And, so I sat there in this session, and I said to myself, how did we get here? How did this happen? Why has there been a deterioration in the quality of the public education at Wauwatosa West? I don't know if you've seen the recent public high school rankings of the Business Journal, but Wauwatosa East is ranked number 9 in the region. Wauwatosa West didn't even make the top 25. And that assumes the same amount of money and resources being committed to each student. Why is there such a disparity? Why the different results? And these are questions that I'd like this board to address, not with specific answers to me tonight, but as you sit here in your newly elected positions, these are some considerations that I think I and others in this community want you guys to consider. This board in the past, one of the main priorities.
15 seconds.
Okay, well, one of the main priorities is the achievement gap. You can't get an achievement gap closed with teachers that can't teach, a lack of academic rigor, and disruptive behavior on campus. The students that you want to help, you're actually hurting in the long run if you're not going to have rigor, discipline, and teachers that are afraid.
We're over 3 minutes. If you
Okay,
could wrap up, I'd
for sure. In closing, you can't allow these schools to deteriorate. That would be an insult to this community, the taxpayers, the parents, and the students, and I urge you all to take action to correct things. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room that would like to speak?
Todd Dahlgren, 1647 North 122nd Street. I'd like to address what happened at Wauwatosa West on Friday. Unlike most of the community, I didn't find out about that until late Friday night as I was driving up north to spend the weekend with my parents. So you can imagine my surprise, my anger, my frustration upon checking my phone when I arrived in Rice Lake, Wisconsin, to find out that a student had brought a gun to my son's school. After going inside and talking with my parents, I responded to some messages from my friends. And one friend said that there were no words to describe what had happened. And I said, I'd like to use the word unbelievable, but really it isn't. If you start thinking about what's been going on at West, at Whitman, and some of our other schools, it really isn't all that unbelievable. While I was driving, I was listening to an audiobook because I've started to do since I've made more trips to my parents' house. And right now I'm listening to a book called 12 Rules. It's by Dr. Jordan Peterson, a clinical psychologist and teacher at the University of Canada. One of the chapters is titled, Don't Let Your Kids Do Anything That Would Make You Not Like Them. The premise is nobody loves your children more than you. And if you allow your kids to do things that you don't like, inevitably other people in society won't like them. And you're teaching your kids bad habits about responsibility, character, etc. it seems to me that the public school system has a certain tangential responsibility with that too. And I think Friday's events speak to the fact that we're not doing a good enough job. In the book, there was another anecdote. It's a children's fable. It's called Dragons Don't Exist. And the fable goes that a young boy wakes up one morning and sees a baby dragon in his room and goes downstairs, tells his mother, and the mother says, the dragons don't exist. And the baby dragon gets a little bit bigger. And throughout the day, the boy keeps telling his mother that the dragon doesn't exist. And the dragon keeps getting bigger until by the end of the day, the dragon has consumed the entire home. And finally, the mother acknowledges the dragon, at which point the dragon shrinks back to its original size. And the mother asks the child, why do you think the dragon got so big and then so small?
We're at 15 seconds, Mr.
And the boy said, maybe it just needed to be acknowledged. Having said that, I would like to thank Dr. Means for acknowledging the dragon. And secondly, ask, what is it going to take for some people in this community to acknowledge the dragon? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carolyn Nykirk. I'm at 2576 North 84th Street. I have a son that's a junior at West and a daughter that's in 8th grade at Whitman. This past week has been absolutely horrible. Between the gym teacher at Whitman make inappropriate comments to these children, to the episode with the gun and the box cutter. I have friends from other communities calling me saying, what is going on in Wauwatosa? And to be honest with you, it's embarrassing. We pay so much money to live in this community. We pay so much money, our houses, our students, we just try to support them any way we can. And then this is what we're hearing. I mean, in the worst schools, you haven't even been hearing that. It's just really embarrassing. It makes me consider on moving. Do I really move my kids to find a different community where I can have my kids feeling safe? If my daughter's gym teacher is making kind of sexual contact talk to these kids, what is that? And where are they getting it from? And one other thing is, we can never know what happened to our principal at Whitman. Why is our principal leaving at West? But everybody wants to know if our kids are vaccinated. Everybody wants to know our business, but why can we not? We don't need to know the total details, but a little bit. These people are with our kids day in and day out. How can we not know a little bit of what is going on? That is my concern. I'm so disappointed right now. I've been so happy with the district until maybe a couple years ago. And now I feel like it's collapsing. Please be a strong school board and get this community, these schools back to where they were so we can be up here, not shrinking down here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Margaret Fritch. I live at 2404 North 88th Street. My youngest child graduated in 2015. Both of my children had great educations at Wauwatosa West. And since then, I don't know what's going on. Hearing all of these stories, I am keeping myself involved as a taxpayer, because if our schools suck, then our community is basically going to go downhill. We are paying a lot in taxes to live here. And as a board, if you're considering the new leadership at your next meeting, I would strongly encourage you to look at who has been in the leadership positions for the last few years and led us down these paths. With the AVID scandal, our enrollment is down over 300 students. We have brand new schools. Who's going to fill them? So I strongly encourage you to take a look at who will be the next board president and make a good decision.
Hi, Adam Davis, 2636 North 90th Street. Really just to piggyback on what some of the speakers have already said tonight regarding the recent incident. I have a parent of a student at West and Whitman, so big shocker. That's what's filling the room tonight. It's also interesting that, to my knowledge, I don't think any one of you has a kid in either of those schools. So I find that interesting and coincidental about maybe what's going on with the attitudes and the leadership on the board for the last several years. There's been too many botched situations. There's been too many scandals. We've been in the news constantly. I work out in Western Waukesha County, work with patients every day. It's almost embarrassing to say I live in Wauwatosa with all the stuff going on with the schools in the community. So the reputation of Tosa schools is going down quickly. I have friends in New Berlin. They wouldn't move here and send their kids to these schools if you paid them. And I've already known, several families that have moved out of Tosa exactly for this reason, 100% for these reasons. It's really depressing. I was kind of pleased to see some of the reaction to the gun incident, but again, kind of like a lot of the COVID stuff, when I read that these searches are voluntary and they don't mention, I don't know what happens if the kid decides to not let them search their backpack, if he gets to stay there with the bag, but sort of, as I would call it, safety theater, just like a lot of the COVID stuff. I mean, if a kid has a gun in a bag and he doesn't get it searched and he walks out and puts that bag back in his car, wherever, what is the point? And I just don't really see, we can get into, maybe there's obviously probably legalities, whatever. But again, you guys crank out these emails with a bunch of things you're going to do, but it really isn't addressing the issue. And it's just a workaround, and it's just to look like you're trying something. And Dr. Means, I do appreciate the effort you've done. I know you've been very responsive to, we haven't had a lot of discussion, but I know you've been very responsive to people I know that have had very good interactions with you, so I do appreciate that. You've got a lot of work still in front of you. So I would just implore the board to look at that when selecting a leadership. It's really, I never attended a meeting until 2.5, 3 years ago. Never thought I had to, but with all the stuff that's been coming up, it's really, really disturbing to say the least. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hope it's okay if I move these down.
Please do.
Always the short one in the room. Danielle Long, 2622 North Menominee River Parkway. I'm here tonight as a parent of an 8th grader at Whitman and a sophomore at West. Last week was a rough one. 2 schools with 2 alarming incidents left one family shaken. I won't even go into the reckless driving situation of a student at Longfellow Middle School. Many people here may not even be aware of what really happened on Wednesday at Whitman, that a teacher with a history of mental illness and violence had an incident with students. This interaction was conveyed home to parents as an inappropriate conversation about sex, but in fact, it was so much more. This teacher was charged with violent felonies in 2020 and 2021, and he was found not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect in order to serve a commitment. Yet he was allowed to return to Whitman to teach again. Last week, he was clearly experiencing a mental health episode, ultimately requiring him to be escorted out of the building. When I asked my child about it, she shared other recent episodes with this teacher that scared her. I wish she would have said something to me sooner, and it hurt my heart that she didn't. I am aware that this is a very sensitive nature. I absolutely want to be respectful of this individual, and I understand that this is a delicate balance to be had here. I truly hope he is able to receive the help he needs. However, these are very serious situations, and I've asked the board to look into these charges. While I certainly understand that school districts are required to keep personnel information confidential or risk liability, not intervening also created risk for our students and opened the district up to other possible liability. This could have been so much worse. I am asking you to work with me to ensure that this never, ever happens again. Someone in the district knew about these criminal charges and allowed him to return to work. The foreseeability here that something could have happened to a child and someone didn't intervene is concerning and disappointing. School district school district policies followed in this situation? There appears to have been a breakdown, and I'm asking the district to determine where that breakdown occurred. I reached out to the board on Friday. I was referred by Mr. Doman to Dr. Means, saying that the board would not be involved in the employment status of any individual teacher. Mr. Meyer responded and informed me that up until last week, he was not made aware of this teacher's criminal record. I wonder, did any of the board members know about this? Now that you do, you have a duty to act. I'm not going to get into the West situation as it's been covered. I will ask that you look into the Wisconsin Department of Justice Office of School Safety. They have resources, including a Speak Up, Speak Out campaign that these schools could benefit from. Our students and teachers need to be able to report concerning information. We all need to work together to ensure this doesn't happen again, to ensure the safety and success of all students in this district. Between weapons and an alarming amount of fights, we have seen too much violence in our schools recently. Our students are dealing with a lot and need to learn how to resolve conflict without violence. Sadly, this violence has become second nature for our kids. What are we doing to address the harm that has occurred? Students who don't feel safe cannot learn. Teachers
You're
who
at
do
3
not-
minutes if you could wrap up, Ms. Lund.
I'm
Thank you.
almost done, thank you. Teachers who do not feel safe cannot teach. I'm addressing the board tonight because according to your website, your responsibilities include establishing policy for the district administration to implement and oversee, as well as advocate on behalf of students and promote the cause of public education, communication with and keep citizens informed about the progress or any problems in the district. We are here tonight to hold you to this. Dr. Means is doing cleanup on aisle 6 and he's doing a phenomenal job. Many years of unchecked bad behavior has gotten us to this point. Why did that happen? I recently heard him say, children are welcome here, but their behavior isn't. I believe that's a perfect message to convey to our students. We want them all to be welcome here, but the behavior they're exhibiting is not welcome. The culture of not holding students accountable for the behavior has to come to an end. I hope last week's events serve as a wake-up call to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I make a request to add to the request for follow-up, please?
I'm not sure I followed what you're saying.
May I speak a little bit?
Can we get through all public comments first?
Yes, it does directly relate to that comment, but I'll hold as your request.
Sure. Any other public comments from those in the room?
Emily Peters, 2525 North 82nd Street. I am a 20-year veteran of the school district with a son who graduated in 2019. I have a senior at West and an 8th grader at Whitman. And like many other parents here, I have the same concerns. My one question for the board is, what's it gonna take? What's it gonna take for you to make change? Does a teacher have to get shot dead like they did in West back in the 1990s? What's it gonna take? Can you please take action? Because these events that have been happening are not acceptable. And you see the same faces here all the time, mine being one of them. And I'm sure you're sick of seeing me. So if you don't wanna see me at these board meetings, do something, act. We're tired of being here all the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Jamie, it looks like we're done. Public comment in the room. Is there anyone online?
Yeah, we got some hands raised. Sarah Larand, you have the microphone. Please state your name and address.
Yes, thank you. This is Sarah Larand. I'm at 2445 North 91st Street. I also, like many here, have a child at Whitman and West. And I just wanted to start out by thanking the district for the emails about the incidents that did occur. And to say that I am very grateful that the community elected Jenny Hoeg, a mental health professional, to sit on the board, because moving forward, expertise like this is going to be so important. We have a world and a community that have been through a lot of trauma, and we are all so divided and angry and scared. And it's the things we are saying our children are hearing, and it's making it harder for them. And unfortunately, I've heard a lot more of that again tonight already. And it makes me sad as a community member. I am in total agreement that right now random screening and increased police presence is necessary right now as everyone is processing the events of last week. And I would like the board to take a look at updating the 2009 policy that kids can opt out of screening. It's one of those policies that's outdated, and we need, it has come to our attention, and it really doesn't work in today's world. So I hope you will look at that in the future. And the resources, what we need to do is we need to put them to mental health in the days, months, and years to come. As a district, we need to find ways to connect to every student, especially even the ones that just seem to maybe be getting along. We should be over-identifying so kids aren't getting lost and withdrawn. A lot of colleges are trying programs like this now, as they've seen that a lot of the random shooters and things are people who have just gotten lost in the mist, and mental illness has affected them. So I'm glad that we've chosen to use some of the extra resources we got from COVID to put to mental health, but it will take more. As a district, we also need to educate our legislators that the mental health of our suburban kids was impacted by COVID, ask them for more resources, and also as a community, demand stricter gun laws and educate and increase education for gun owners on how to safely store guns in their home. I mean, guns are scary, and the number of gun owners in our state has increased. So I just urge the board to continue to promote grace and positive change and acceptance, education, and awareness. And thank you for all you're doing. And I'm optimistic as we move forward and working on these issues. Thank you.
Next is Tanya Jar. You have the microphone. Please state your name and address.
Tanya Jar, 2428 North 97th Street. I have been a Wauwatosa resident for 16 years. I have a daughter in 10th grade at West, and I have twins in 7th grade at Whitman. I've worked with the district for 5 years, but tonight I'm speaking as a parent. I see great things happening throughout this district, with the exception of Whitman and West right now. None of my kids have had a consistent principal at their schools this year. One of the impacts of the void in leadership is worsening student behaviors, as we've mentioned tonight. As of a few months ago, there had already been over 40 physical fights at a middle school at Whitman. And in the past 3 weeks, each one of my kids was personally impacted by an incident at their school. 3 weeks ago, my son was held down by 3 boys in the locker room at Whitman while another boy whipped him with a towel repeatedly, despite my son asking him to stop. Last week, my daughter was involved with the teacher at Whitman who appeared to be having the mental health crisis. And it wasn't until later that we found out that this teacher had committed several violent crimes in the past 2 years during the time that he was employed in our district. This man has a license to work with students with special needs, our most vulnerable children in the district. Finally, my daughter at West, as we have mentioned as well, is walking the halls with kids who may have a gun or a box cutter in their backpack. So there seems to be a significant discrepancy between what's happening at Longfellow and East and what's happening over here at Whitman and West. I would ask you to consider if this is equitable. All but one of our school board members lives on the East Side, and some have children that attend East Side schools. The board has seemed to be completely unaware of what's happening on the West Side, and quite frankly, it has felt as though you really don't care. I would wonder if your response would be different if these were your children that were being personally affected by these issues, or if these things were happening at the schools that your children are attending. There is a full-blown crisis going on right now at Whitman. Many staff have left, and many are considering leaving. And the number one reported reason that they have given is the lack of support for student behaviors. I fear that we are going to lose even more of our good teachers. Staff cannot do their jobs effectively when they are constantly dealing with student behaviors, and no child can learn in an environment where he or she does not feel safe. I work in special education. I understand the impacts like trauma, anxiety, and depression have on child's behavior. But in addition to providing the needed support for our dysregulated students, we need to balance our empathy and understanding with high expectations and consequences. Dr. Means, I want to thank you for the actions that you've taken thus far. I ask that you continue to address the problems at Whitman and West with the sense of urgency that you have. And to the board, I ask that you pay attention and acknowledge what is happening on the West Side. I ask that you continue to support Dr. Means in his effort to ensure that all children have a safe and supportive environment in which they can learn. Thank you.
Okay, next is Matt Borden. You have the microphone. Please state your name and address.
My name is Matt Borden. I live at 2376 North 91st Street. I'm the parent of two boys at McKinley. And I have to say, right now, like many of my peers who are parents at McKinley and other great elementary schools, we're faced with a real predicament because we love our community, we love where we live. And right now, we've got kids that are in schools that greatly exceed expectations, that score in the 90s on the DPI report card. And we're fast approaching the problem schools that all of these other people have been up speaking about tonight. And I want to put a numerical point on this. A number of other people have mentioned it. East High School, which is where 6 out of our 7 board members have live in the east area of Tosa, scores an 85 on the DPI report card. And West, which has only got 1 board member who lives in the area of West High School, scores a fairly miserable 71. How can this district, how can the board face parents who have kids at these amazing grade schools and explain why we face such a miserable prospect in middle and high school? And like many of my peers, we are looking at alternatives. And if enrollment is going down now, just wait if this continues. Please, please look at this discrepancy between East and West. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Laura Ryan. You have the microphone. Please state your name and address.
Hi, Laura Ryan, 309 North 69th Street. Just wanted to add maybe a slightly different perspective to some of the comments about the district going downhill. I went to school at Tosa West. I graduated from there 22 years ago, and I live on the east side now. But back then it was when I first started going to the district, was right after Dale Brightlow was killed. And, if we remember that being like the first school shooting pretty much. And at the time we of course didn't have emails and things to instantly communicate and update things of that nature. So I think we have such a huge amount of transparency now with Dr. Means in particular, that it maybe seems as if we're getting all this negative information, but perhaps a lot of that stuff was going on before and we weren't getting notified, and therefore people didn't know what was going on. I do see a district that is trying to do a lot with a lot of things, despite having to be healthcare providers essentially in the last year and a half, where all of the focus had to be shifted to that. And I see consistent attempts to improve in multiple areas in the district. I think maybe we're asking too much of the board at times to fix our societal issues. So anyway, just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
One more, Lynn Kohler. You have the microphone. Please state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Lynn Kaler, 2453 North 97th. I have been a Wauwatosa resident for 10 years. I am the proud parent of a first grader at McKinley and a soon-to-be junior kindergartner. I have had nothing but positive things to say about my older child's experience. I constantly tell people that we have won the teacher lottery every year. McKinley, even in a pandemic, has been my child's happy place. He loves school and is always happy to go. During the school weeks, my child's incredible teachers have spent more hours in his day with them than me. This involves a great deal of trust, and I trust that my child is safe and happy at McKinley. All of these events at Whitman and West are incredibly frightening, and I worry about the safety and wellness of students and staff. And it makes me hesitate to think about sending my children to Wauwatosa, Whitman, and West High School. Safety is at the base of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, just above the most basic physiological needs. As others have stated, the higher and subsequent levels of belonging, friendship, family, achievement, problem solving, etc., cannot develop when their basic needs are not met. At this time, I am trusting you with my children's futures. Please take it as seriously as I do. I greatly appreciate Dr. Mean's communication, and I urge all of you to support him in making our schools a place to be proud of and a place where children can be safe and learn and be happy. Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have a couple more. Laura Reed, you have the microphone. Please state your name and address.
Hi, this is Laura Reed. I'm at 8837 Stickney Avenue. I am a full-time working mom with 2 children at McKinley. I have a 4K and a second grader. I haven't paid as much attention to school district issues in general. However, it has become unavoidable at this point. I have continued to hear about escalating middle and high school safety issues, academic decline, and lack of staff stability. A couple of months ago, my daughter, who is in second grade, came to me and didn't want her brother around and said, "Mommy, I need to talk to you alone. I don't want my little brother to hear this." And she said, please don't send me to Whitman because I've heard about the fights at school. I've heard about weapons and I'm so scared to go there. That was very heartbreaking to hear that from a second grader. And for her to even have to worry about that at her age. I love Tosa and I could never imagine leaving, but if this continues, then I will consider moving. I can't imagine what the parents in middle and high school wake up and feel of sending their children to school, whether they pull them and change, what they're used to in their lives and pull them out of school, or what if I continue to send them and something happens to them or their friends, or anyone in the school? Parents have the responsibility to teach morals, respect, and good decision-making, but we have to work as a community to change what's happening. I ask that the board act strong and swiftly to change these fundamental issues, and because I want that to happen before something more serious happens and it's too late. We all have to do what's in our power, and I understand that that doesn't mean it's full responsibility on the board. However, you are a vital part of this and we need you, and we're relying on you for the safety of our children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Kurt Fleury. You have the microphone. Please state your name and address. Kurt Fleural, you had your hand raised.
Sorry, I was on mute. My name's Kurt Fleural. I live at 3469 North Menominee River Parkway. I've had the privilege to have two students get through West, the West Side schools, Eisenhower and Whitman. I've got I guess our last child is going through West right now. He's actually in the room. I guess the information I've recovered across the last 15 years, the experience at Eisenhower, Whitman, and West, I think everybody's captured it. Mr. Davis, Mr. Long, Mrs. Niekirk, Mr. Dahlgren, Matt Borden, your concern it makes sense. This is not right. There's something seriously wrong. Something seriously has to happen immediately. This can't wait. This can't be studied. I don't know how we ended up in this social experiment that we've got, but it has to end. We've invested in the schools. My tax bill, everybody else who's at this meeting, their tax bills, property tax bills have gone up markedly in the last 2-3 years just for the improvements. We've improved the schools, and I'm not sure where the problem is coming from, but the schools, I don't think it's the teachers. I think it's what the teachers are working with. I don't know if we're importing the problem, but if we are importing the problem for funding purposes, we need to stop importing the problem. The school board needs to take action and figure out what's going on and get back to the community that we've got here and get to brass tacks and educate the communities and students that we've got. Everybody that has spoken tonight is dead on, and our schools and our community is not going to sustain, I guess the decline that I've seen across the last 12 years. Those parents at McKinley, we've had friends that have had their kids go through McKinley. It's a great school. We've had great experiences through middle school and in the high school with those students. I would be scared. I've told people, I don't know if I would move back to Tosa. We've been here 22 years. I've been a neighborhood association president. I've coached kids in soccer and basketball. I would not invest if in this community if the school board doesn't take some action. Thanks.
Thank you. Is that all, Jim?
I believe so. Yeah, we have a hand raised, Laura Ryan, but I believe she just lowered it. Yeah, we're done.
Mr. Meyer, there was a comment you wanted to address.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Doman. I have two comments, and I'm going to frame them up as requests for future actions or discussions, so I don't start a substantive discussion here. The first is with regard to the report of 3 students holding down another student in a locker room and a 4th student, the word used was whipping, I believe, the kid being held down with a towel. That tells me that locker room was not supervised. And some 55 years ago, when I was growing up in La Crosse in western Wisconsin, with no imported students, if to use that term that was used here, we were all residents. There was horseplay in the locker room at Longfellow Junior High School, and there was an accident and a child died. And there and ever after, the locker room was supervised. So we need to look at this going forward about all of these physical, either horseplay or altercations or fights. People can die from those things. And we need to look at that going forward, that we have supervision, adequate supervision in locker rooms, for example, that there isn't the horseplay or whatever there is, so there can't be an accident where someone dies. The second thing is with regard to the what Ms. Long reported to us, there was the report that the school district had received legal advice. And I've seen now that item and a couple of other items in the past year where there has been what I thought was a breakdown in legal advice being communicated to the board, or some misunderstanding at the board level, not necessarily the full board, as to how to be smart consumers or sophisticated consumers of the legal advice. The board, if we have legal advice and it paints us into a corner and ties our hands, that should be elevated to the board level for the board to own the decision on what to do next. So going forward, we need to look at how we're receiving our legal advice, how it's being like triaged and processed, how decisions are made about how it's escalated up to the full board. So the full board has a chance to address any concerns created by the legal advice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. So that finishes our public comment. We will move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda which board members would like to remove for separate discussion and action?
Mr. President, I would like a short discussion of, at least from my part anyway, of everything except the minutes. So if we can separate out the minutes, and maybe it's okay just to discuss the consent agenda.
I think we can just discuss.
Okay, all right.
If you're not asking for anything to be removed for a separate vote. Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So
To approve.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, there are basically a year's worth of teachers' contracts in the consent agenda. And we need to, I'm told, approve all these contracts because we have an end of April legal requirement for approval of teaching contracts. So I raised the question with Dr. Means, well, what courses are we offering? Because we contract with teachers based on the courses we're going to offer. And my point is, he said, well, the courses and the teaching contracts are driven by the staffing plan and driven by student enrollment in the registration for the different courses. And how many, like a 0.9 position for music or whatever, is driven by how many students register for music. And then my thought was, well, to be equity driven, to be diversity driven, to be inclusion driven, to be an incubator for ideas, well, we might not want to always be formula driven. We might want to, as a school district, say, you know, we're going to have these particular classes, and so be it. If there's only 3 students in it, we need to offer it. Now, of course, you can't afford to do that very much, but I think we should make those decisions and address them before it's all said and done, and it's too late to really effectively change the direction that we're going in. Now, I own this too because I heard the staffing plan presented on June 28th last year, and I didn't request that it be an action item that we voted on because, as we know, the board hasn't spoken unless we call the roll. So going forward, I would like us to, as a board, hear those, of course, hear the staffing plan and give a heads up to the community that, hey, this is going to drive what courses are offered in high school for your young people. And is there something here we're not doing that we should do? That we want to do, but we just didn't realize we weren't doing it. You know, some course, maybe, you know, I've been beating the drum for, you know, a African-American history class or, you know, all kinds of, whatever, a special music class, whatever, that we proactively address those questions as a board. So we be sure that our strategic objectives are being fulfilled by the courses we're offering. So, you know, I'm going to vote yes tonight with the note that I would please like to see, and I need to remember it myself going forward, that the early planning drives our ability to have choices when it comes to approving these contracts. And we didn't have a vote on the planning, by fault too, folks. And so the choices are handed to us, and there really isn't a choice then, because it's just yes or no. So thank you.
Any other board comment on the consent agenda?
Can I respond to Mr. Myers?
Tell me.
So I guess my question is that the process in the past has been, and if this has changed, Dr. Marble or Dr. Means, that when new courses are brought before the board, we vote on them in terms of like student driven, teacher driven, and that's how we come up with sort of those innovative new things. Can you talk a little bit about what you're saying is different than how we've been doing it?
Well, Dr. Means explained this to me when I called him this week. He said, well, there's a certain, and help me please, Dr. Means, to be better informative here. We can't just offer a whole bunch of courses with 3 students in it. So we have to have some operating principles that don't break the bank. And so you use an enrollment formula or a registration formula, is that right? And then, but then there's, if the board wanted to offer, say, Latin in the high schools, and there were only 5 students who wanted to enroll in it, and the board thought, well, Latin is part of what Wauwatosa does, right? We want to offer that no matter what. Dr. Means really hasn't been told by the board that's okay to break the formula for certain cases. And is that right? And can you help me here? Sure. How am I doing?
You're doing well.
Okay. Well, no, I wasn't looking for praise, but
no, you're doing well.
Help us understand this.
I think so often we understand the staffing process at the high school level. Let's start at junior kindergarten.
Okay.
So I'm meeting with our junior kindergarten teachers in a few weeks who have made a request of having a certain class size. And they're saying, coming out of our shutdown, our COVID shutdown, that they're seeing more needs in JK. So I think the allocation and how many staff members we allocate is something that we deal with across the entire district. But your analysis is accurate. At the high school level in particular, we are driven by student enrollment, and we typically use a threshold of 15 students to indicate if we're going to run a course or not. If we have less than 15 students, that's when we have to make some decisions. It's usually customary for us to at least allow a capstone course to run even if you don't have 15 students. So let's say you have the final year of a world language or an advanced placement course. When students have made that commitment to that track, we run the course, or at least I think we've done that prior to me being here. That's just usual and customary in education, that you let students complete that experience. I think what Mr. Meyer is speaking to, because what you're being asked to approve tonight are all full-time contracts. Now, the configuration of those contracts may not be to the liking of a certain staff member. So, for example, if I'm an art teacher and I prefer to teach at the middle school level, but based on enrollment, I may have to pick up a portion at the elementary level and middle school. Those are some of the complaints you may hear. I wouldn't call them complaints, concerns and preferences that people are expressing. If you are a teacher of a certain music specialty and you're being asked to teach 80% of that specialty and then 20% of general music because you have a license in that area as well, that may not be your preference. And so what you have in front of you tonight is a list of contracts that we are very happy to say that we're able to offer. You don't have any non-renewals in front of you based on a decline in enrollment. You do not have it. So what Mr. Meyer is speaking to is maybe some preferences that some of our staff members would prefer, ideally if enrollment was ideal. The last thing I would just state is different from our elementary and middle school space, or some of our middle school space, the high school enrollment numbers are truly driven, and I would defer. This is a great opportunity for our student school board members to weigh in, but our enrollment at the high school level is driven by our students. And so students make decisions on what they believe we should offer and what we shouldn't offer by virtue of their selection process. And in some case, I think there are messages being delivered without it being very explicit. In some cases, if students are not enrolling for a course, that's telling us something. And I think we should adhere to what the students are telling us. The last thing I would say, and then I will defer to our student reps. Dr. Marble and I have talked. I think one thing that as I analyze systems, and as I've started to talk to Keith Brightman, who will be our CFO, who will start on June 1st, I think we are about 6 weeks too late into the process. So it does back us up. I would prefer to bring new course offerings to the board somewhere around October instead of November, because if we bring it to you sooner, that's how then we can get it to the students sooner. They can enroll. We can allow parents about it. It allows us to create an environment where our elective teachers can show our students why their elective area is so fascinating. Why is it so interesting? So in the future, we would like to have an elective fair where our French teachers can talk about the beauty of French, or the language of diplomacy, or allow our German teachers to explain, from what I hear, and I'll defer to Mr. Phillips on this one, to talk about German, the language of European finance. And so just digging into that and giving our elective teachers a chance to promote the beauty of their subjects. We don't do that here. And I think that's a disadvantage to students, that they don't have the chance to see and hear and maybe just test drive, if you will, the advantages of electives. I firmly believe that that's a major reason why we're seeing such a difficult time with enrollment. I think Dr. Marble and the student reps agreeing a little bit, but I'll stop there and see if they have any insight to provide.
I would say nothing more than just I think that there needs to, or I think that it's important to be equitable with those arts and with the I don't want to say 4 classes, but you do have the 5 disciplines that you run. I'm in AP history now, and I really, really like it. It's not I'm not a creative person, but AP history has given me a chance to dive into the history part of art, and I took it to be more interesting in a museum, and I've accomplished that. But it's not running next year, and that I heard that today, and it made me really sad because I convinced like 10 people to take it. And it's not running, but the thing is that AP research is running next year, and it has very little people. And so I think that what Dr. Means and Mr. Meyer was saying about trying to be equitable with the arts and the core classes is really important, and also looking at how many kids drop a course a couple weeks into the school year. Because there are so many kids who want to take that AP class, and once you get into it, or just a regular class, and you realize this isn't really what I want to be spending my time on. Maybe it's the right teacher, this isn't the right environment, and they drop it, and that's great. I've personally done that just because it didn't work out. And so my AP history class is really small, and so I think we need to realize that that can't happen, and that also affects how we look at classes for the next school year.
Sure. I would also like to add on that I think the idea of like an electives fair is an amazing idea because we do have days in our school in which students can learn about other AP classes, and I think that is important, but I also think that there's lots of work to be done in some of the electives classes. because many times whenever I'm looking to take a class, I have to reach out to my peers and try to convince as many of them as possible just so that we can get the course to run. And then some of the courses, I will talk to other teachers, like some of them haven't run in 10, 12 years and they're not known about. And that kind of then goes back to our counseling, where counselors, like, they push us on just a standard path. And from experience, there isn't much promotion of diversity in our electives. And at Wauwatosa West, I'd say one area that is really lacking attention would be our business education classes. I wanted to take those, and last year we actually did have enough students to make one of them run that hasn't run in many years, and it just conflicts with my other AP classes. I wasn't able to take it, but I think it is valuable that we help students learn more about these classes so that they know what to take, and it's not more just counselors just pushing students through the system, where there's other classes where they can learn more real world applications that can help them find a career through our district.
Thank you. So if I may add one more thing to put this in cold financial terms. We more or less every year between 8th grade and 9th grade pick up 50 resident students. So more or less 50 students every year are in our 9th grade that were not in our 8th grade. So because it's a 4-year high school, we every year have 4 of those cohorts. So there's 200 students in our high school level residents who started in TOSA schools in 9th grade. Well, on the state aid formula, that goes to $2.5, $2.8 million, depending upon exactly how many. So over $2.5 million a year we get in state aid because of the high school students who weren't with us K through 8 come in for 9 through 12. So we're selling a product. And those parents who make those choices to put their child in our school in 9th grade, I bet you they look at course offerings. And if we want to promote enrollment, we need some of those lost leaders from the grocery store, right? You know, the sale items that get you in the store. We need a sale item here to get more students in our high schools. And of course, we have to do the managerial economics on it, and not, because you can go broke doing that stuff too. But there is something seriously to look at about offering these things that the students say, you know what, we really wish it was here. And we know we have friends at other schools that a certain class isn't offered anywhere else. And if we offer it, we might pick up some students. And so that's sort of my approach to balancing the budget and dealing with enrollment is, offer more things that people want. And so that all drives back into this. Here we are voting yes on all these contracts, and the contracts are for the courses, and what courses are we offering and why. So I'm going to go vote yes tonight, but let's do our strategic planning stuff about who we are as a district, what kind of courses we want to offer, the equity-driven courses and things that will appeal to people that they want to come to TOSA high schools, because we offer some things that they might not get somewhere else. So thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
And maybe even opening that up when you are making the decision for courses to middle schoolers or families or even lowerclassmen in high school, just to kind of gauge what they would want to take. And what Mr. Meyer was saying about the sale ticket item, that's how I came to the district. I went to private school most of my life just based on the International Baccalaureate program, but I was persuaded to go to the school district because of the course selection. So keeping that up would be great.
One of the things I'm curious about is if, as we're doing course scheduling, does it need to be an annual thing, or can it be biannual?
It needs to be annual.
It has to be annual.
Yes, sir.
Because one of the things I was curious about is if a student knows that AP art history, for example, is offered every other year. and or kind of along those things of, we may not have enough students on an annual basis to run courses or each course at each high school, but what can we do over a period of time so that, you know, this is going to run once every 3 years. It's not a high need course, but that each student would have an opportunity. And then how do we schedule it so that it's not at a time that would conflict with something else that would be a high need and I want to.
I apologize. That is a strategy to offer a course every other year. So I'm sorry for jumping in so quickly. That is a strategy. I would just add to it, but you can only use that strategy if you have a very mature elective course environment.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, our elective teachers have articulated that they don't feel like they have the full ability to promote their individual courses and not feel like they're pitting themselves against another colleague. So we have to, when I say we, Dr. Marble and I, and our new chief of talent, we have to do a better job in allowing those staff members to be very proud of what they teach and know that they're not pitting themselves against one another, but we're creating an environment, as you heard from our students, where there is an opportunity for them to truly explore. And the other thing I would just share, and I think sometimes it sounds boring, but I think there's a common theme that I hope we're all hearing tonight. We do need different systems in place. And so when I look at our systems right now, we're not very strategic in even reaching out to our emerging 4K or junior kindergarten families. If you look to other communities, they're very aggressive in going into those families and those caregivers to say, it's time for junior kindergarten. Have you registered? And that registration starts in January in many districts. We have a rolling process where it's more low key. Those are systems that we want to fix, where we're more explicit to families of our secondary students to tell them there's a lot of sales items that we have to offer. Our music program is second to none in this metropolitan area. I firmly believe that. Our theater programs at both high schools are outstanding. Our language programs are very, very strong. Our AP offerings are extremely positive. So often in the process of improvement science, we tend to forget what we do well. And when we talk about the offerings we have an abundance of opportunities for kids that they can explore. I don't know if we've done our best, and Dr. Merble's affirming it for me, and Kate's also affirming it for me, and the students are affirming. We could do a better job in publicizing and allowing our great teachers to show our families and our students, this is how much fun you could have if you take this course or that course, and allow them to make really informed decisions. That's going to take better planning, and it's going to take more strategic outlook and work. But I can tell you that Dr. Marble and Mr. Brightman and I have started the process.
Any other board comment on consent agenda?
Two things. Since you're talking about maybe shifting it back to October, I would love to figure out, Will, to your point, how do we engage student voice in this? Because hearing you sort of talk about how like you had to round up people, but maybe didn't have enough. I know for one of my kids, really wanted to take a physics course that hadn't been taught in 15 years. And the teacher said, you can get 15 kids. And he literally rounded up 17 just in case 2 dropped, and they ran AP Physics EM or something. But like that student investment, that class of 15 kids was so engaged in that class that it made it a stronger class too. So I want us to think about the systems. I want us to think about how to invest teachers, but I want us to always go back to the student as like the ultimate consumer. And then the last thing, just because I feel like in light of everything we heard tonight, I absolutely hear what you're saying, Mr. Meyer, in terms of like where the opportunity is, the market opportunity. But I know several of I think it was one of the callers, Ms. Kaler, who talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. People aren't going to care about what our course offerings are if they don't feel like their kids are safe. So, and I know you're not saying that, but
yeah, that's true.
I just want to go on record to say, like, we've got some big issues that we need to address from like a Maslow's perspective. And that's not to say we can't work on academic achievement or anything until then. But I want us to figure out, like, how do we balance all these things? Because the frustration is valid and real, and I'm just trying to figure out, how do we do the innovation and simultaneously get our house in order? Because what we came back to post-COVID is not where we left things off. And I think we're on our heels. And somebody said to me the other day, they're like, well, one, they thought I just finished my term, and I was like, no, I got another year. But they said, how are you feeling about all this? It just feels like one negative thing after the other. And I said, the thing that gives me like hope in what seems like a huge uphill climb right now is that we know what the problems are right now. Like a year ago, I don't think the board really knew what the problems were. And so I'm excited by the audits. I'm excited by the opportunity. I'm excited, Mr. Meyer, you talking about like the opportunity. And that's where I think we have to find the balance between the like, get our house in order and capitalize on the opportunity so that we can be the Wauwatosa that people keep saying they want to get back to.
So I would like to push back a little bit. There's this idea of student engagement. And if we offer courses that are of compelling interest to some of these students who are the behavior challenges, to make, psychologist over there help us out. Is this imagination in me or what? I mean, maybe we can do both at once. Yeah. If we're very shrewd about how we do it, I really want to get to my class here because it's my stuff. That's the only thing I care about in this whole school day. I don't know, somebody who's smarter than me on these things, but I'm capable of being so negative. So I'm trying to be positive, build it and they will come, solve the negatives with a positive. And I hate this, well, bad thing's an opportunity. Well, it was an opportunity to not let the thing get bad to begin with, but we did it. So I think accentuating excitement helps us on our behavior challenges.
Any other comments on the consent agenda from the board?
I'd also just like to add to that point that ensuring that we have these electives can offer an outlet for students. I know especially for me, having art classes is a great way to get away from all of my more strenuous courses in my day. And I think that that does have a strong mental health benefit to students. And as for not creative outlet things, offering these electives allows people to discover what they're passionate about and what their career trajectory is going to look like. So I just wanted to highlight that benefit. And as for accelerated trajectory students, I think that it would be helpful to increase the support for people who are taking harder classes earlier on. So for instance, I took AP Spanish last year and had the opportunity to take a college course for the first semester, but I wasn't able to take a college course and have not taken any Spanish this semester because I wasn't offered sufficient support to take a class that would challenge me. And I was kind of left on my own to figure out how to plan that for myself and fit it into my own schedule. So I think that I would have really benefited from more support in that area. And I know that other students have this similar issue with, for instance, math classes. And I just think that I don't know what that support would look like necessarily. Maybe more opportunities to meet with counselors or something like that. But I would encourage the board to think about what that would look like as well.
Seeing no further board comment, we'll go to community comment on the consent agenda. So these are items that you would like to speak to that are specifically on the consent agenda. Start with those in the room. Seeing none, Jamie, is there anyone online?
There are no hands raised.
Ms. Newman, please call the roll.
Ms. Braley?
Yes.
Dr. Haug?
Yes.
Dr. Jessup Banger?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Ms. Neufeld?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Abstain.
Mr. Doman?
Yes. We'll move on to business services action items, 2022 personal property chargebacks. Mr. Phillips?
Sure. It is recommended that the school board approve $21,814.42 payment to the city of Wauwatosa for the district's portion of the 2020 personal property chargebacks, and I so move.
Second.
Thank you.
Board members, these next two items are simply, I believe, a condition of where we've been with policy 6320 and trying to figure out what's the district's authority or lack thereof. Mr. Roger Dixon's on the line and can speak to what are the chargebacks and why this is being brought to you this evening. Mr. Dixon.
Let me unmute.
Roger, you just need to unmute.
Thank you. I think I've got it now. Yeah, this is something that's happened every year. I look back to 2011, and since 2011, every year the cities has had to bill the school district its proportionate share of the chargebacks for personal property. So those of us as individuals don't pay property tax on our personal property, but businesses do. And in most years, there'll be some appeals to that. So the number we're looking at here is, I believe, it's from the 2020 tax year paid in 2021. So there's about $58,000 the city had to refund to the personal property taxes. The school district share is about $21,000. On average, it's about $11,000. Last year was $39,000, I think. Some years it's zero. So it's a requirement under the statutes. The city accepted those appeals, made some adjustments, but we don't lose the money because we can just add that back to next year's property tax levy. Any questions?
So I think that what we shouldn't lose in terms of the headline is that this has been paid in years past, and it may have exceeded the threshold. And I want to thank Mr. Dixon for his diligence because when this came to us, the thrust was, oh, we always pay this, so pay it. And I think I want to make sure the board gets credit for this. Your direction to me has been very clear. Hit pause if you think you should hit pause, and we have with these next two items. So we're bringing it to you now. It's a procedural move, but nonetheless, it's our effort to be as transparent as we can be.
Thank you, Dr. Means. Any board comments or questions?
Thank you. Only that this is normally one of the budget items that we discuss. And so we're aware of it.
Good.
See no other board comment. Any community comment on this item, specifically the 2022 personal property chargebacks? There's none in the room. Jamie, is there anyone online?
No, there are no hands raised.
Newman, please call the roll.
Ms. Braley?
Yes.
Dr. Haug?
Yes.
Dr. Jessup Banger?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Ms. Neufeld?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Doman?
Yes. Next item, approval of $44,000 in payment to Wallsworth for 2022 East High School Yearbook. Ms. Meadville.
Yes, thank you. It is recommended that the school board approve the payment of $44,000 to Wallsworth for the 2022 East High School Yearbook, and I so move.
Second.
Thank you. Any board questions or comments?
Only I want to thank Ms. Newman for running this down and providing the additional explanation for us based on the first posting. So we're very clear on the transaction, and the community was very clear on the transaction.
Thank you. You know from experience.
Yeah. I've known a couple.
Fantastic. Yeah. Any other board comments inside? Mr.
Are you saying, Catherine, you don't understand the transaction?
No. It's easy to work with when you're like in the yearbook room. It's an easy company to.
Oh, okay, got it.
Any public comment from those in the room on this action item about the yearbooks? Please come forward, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes on this topic.
Troy Seabrook, 4556 North 107th Street. Looking at that number is very surprising to me. When there's other things that we need money for in the school district. When I was in high school, I know it was a long time ago, but our journalism classes and photography classes did the yearbook. They learned how to develop the film in a black room. They put that together. That was not an additional cost to the school district to have a yearbook. $44,000 is a lot of money, especially when we're talking about that we don't have enough support system for our teachers. You know, I'll give you examples of that. I have 2 teachers in my household. One's a speech pathologist and one's a child psychologist. Both of them will not come work in the school district here because they say they don't get enough support. One's a graduate of Tulsa High School, Tulsa West. I would have thought she would love to come back and teach in her school district. She won't. That's because of what you guys have created environment here in Tulsa. There's not enough support for our teachers. And for you to spend $44,000 on a yearbook, I find despicable. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I respond?
Yeah, let's just see if there's any other public comment. Then we'll go back. Then we'll come back to the board. Any comments? I don't see any more in the room. Jamie, is there anyone online?
There are no hands raised.
Yes, please go ahead. Is it Mr. Dixon? Go ahead, Mr. Dixon.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that the $44,000 is not general operating money of the school district. It is a fee that students pay if they want to get a yearbook at the end of the year. So in the prior years, this wouldn't have come to you because it was handled in a different way under the accounting rules. The accounting rules changed 2 years ago. So now they recognize the school board has responsibility for those monies, but it's not taxpayer money. It's not money that we get from federal or state government in any of our aids.
Thank you for that explanation.
And that's why I asked for this item to be clarified, because of the sensitivity around the taxes and the community. So this is money that the students, that we put in a fund after the students give us, you know, that they want a yearbook. So we collect the funds and we are taking those same funds to pay the vendor. So it's a student-driven item.
It's a pass-through budget.
So thank you. I didn't realize that. So we're just a conduit for money from the students to the book company.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we're helping the students, and they would still like the yearbook. And this is similar to how we handle all activity funds.
And I believe Katie was saying she's creating the yearbook.
The students.
No.
Katie knows the people creating
Yes.
the yearbook.
Yes.
All right, there's no other board comment, Ms. Newman?
Oh, sorry, hold on 1 second.
I'm sorry, we've closed public comment on this item already. You'll have a chance at the end if you want to speak again. Thank you. Ms. Newman, please call the roll.
Ms. Fraley?
Yes.
Dr. Haug?
Yes.
Dr. Jessup Banger?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Ms. Mufeld?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Dolman?
Yes. Moving on to our teaching and learning action item, approval of English language arts professional learning contract. Dr. Jessica Banger.
Sorry, I've got to go back. It is recommended that the school board approve the English language arts professional learning contract with the reading and writing project as attached, and I so move.
Second.
Thank you. Percent screen.
Good evening, everyone. Nicole Marble, Director of Secondary Education. I am here this evening to discuss the Summer Institute Professional Learning Contract that is before you. We are really excited here in the Wauwatosa School District to be able to provide this professional learning opportunity for our educators. It is in partnership with the Reading Writing Project out of Columbia University's Teachers College in New York. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what that is and the professional learning that will ensue if you so approve of this contract with this organization. So in short, the proposal before you is for a number of different reasons. So in the 2020-2021 school year, as you're aware, new language arts curriculum was introduced in grades junior kindergarten through 8th grade. In the summer of 2020, which we all remember, we were all continued to be sequestered in our homes. We did have a mandatory virtual learning opportunity for our educators and our support staff, so that moving into the 2020-2021 school year, they had at least a launch of a foundational understanding of the curricular resources that they were going to be utilizing. We did engage staff with some intermittent additional professional learning, but it wasn't to the level of robust professional learning that we would have liked to be able to do with our staff prior to that. As a result of the pandemic, also in that 2020-2021 school year, the level of professional learning was not optimal. A lot of the learning that ensued was around making adjustments to hybrid, virtual, concurrent learning at that time, and was the focus was really taken away from our opportunity to really dig deep with the new curriculum. The proposed professional learning that is before you tonight is a result of our educators' feedback saying we want more. We want to be able to better support our students, so help us better support our students with providing us with some additional learning. So as a result of that, we want to see student learning being greater optimized in our classrooms. We want to improve student learning outcomes and make gains on addressing disproportionality that we are aware of that exists in our school district. Back in February, we did put forth in the ESSER 3 funds. We did recommend, and you all approved, of allocating funds in that ESSER 3 to support junior kindergarten through 8th grade professional learning in English language arts. So just to back up, the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project out of Columbia University, Lucy Calkins and her colleagues are the authors of what we have implemented in junior kindergarten, second grade through 8th grade for units of study as the English language arts curriculum. We use a slightly different approach based upon our student needs and research in the junior kindergarten through 1st grade courses. However, we are asking our senior staff developers at the Teachers College to work with us so that we can also provide learning to our educators in junior kindergarten through 1st grade that will be supportive of the learning that takes place in their classroom. I will not read through all of the bullet points here before you. This is what the Readers Writers Project has proposed to us in terms of our options of how we focus our learning with our educators this summer. What we have done in our RSVP to our educators, and to date, we have 125 of them that have said, sign me up. I am so excited to be a part of this learning. I am hungry for it. We have also asked for their feedback based on what you have observed in your classrooms. What do you need learning around, in particular around reading instruction? We have found from our feedback throughout from our educators that writing is a little bit more tangible for them to provide feedback on, engage in what we call conferring. So sitting down with a student, giving that student immediate feedback. It's a little bit more difficult when it comes to reading. And so our educators have overwhelmingly told us we really want to double down on reading. So that's where I anticipate our focus being with our learning that we'll engage our staff with this summer. So we'll take the feedback that's given. We'll also look at our quantitative data that is available to us through STAR testing, the Ford exam, the common summative assessments that are being done in our classrooms to be able to provide that information to the staff developers so that we have a very comprehensive and catered professional learning to our specific needs. Back when the English language arts curriculum was first implemented, this was the trajectory of the plan. And you can see that in 2021, 2022, it was the intention to really dive into that strong universal reading instruction and practice. We have not had the opportunity to really dive into that. And so before we launch in the 2020-2023 school year, we would like to have the opportunity to set a strong foundation with a critical mass of educators so that going into 2022-2023, we have a foundation to build off in the different, in our different schools. Our teachers, we recognize that we are taking them away from their summer time and we want to be able to compensate them for their professional learning. So the participation in this summer's learning is highly encouraged, but it is not mandatory. We didn't feel that it was we had enough of a runway to be able to say this is a mandatory event. Again, we want to have a critical mass of our staff that have the learning so that they can continue to be an informal support to our teachers. There was been a question raised of why a stipend. We did tell our educators that they would be given a stipend of $100 a day. That is commensurate with what we have paid our teachers in the past for some other professional learning. I'm going to utter the word AVID, but when our teachers engaged in the AVID training, they were compensated $100 a day. It's the same. We've done that also with other trainings for math in the past as well, the one that comes to my head. So if we are sticking with that $100 a day stipend, when we look at all of the educators that are eligible to participate in this professional learning, so that goes beyond just our classroom teachers. So it is our junior kindergarten through 8th grade general education teachers. That includes our English language arts teachers at the middle school level. It also includes our special education teachers, our English language arts teacher, our English language learner teachers, or our multi-language teachers, our interventionists and our reading assistants. It includes our speech pathologists, our administrators, our reading specialists. So it goes beyond just the classroom teacher. It's also the support staff that wrap around our students on a daily basis. So we have, when you put all of those 300 plus individuals together, we're looking at, if we do $100 a day, a stipend of which comes to a general total of $108,000 versus a per diem rate of $320,000. So there was a question of why not the per diem? This is what it would cost us to invest that amount of funds. Additionally, when we look at what we would potentially be paying per educator for these experts to come into the district, we're looking at approximately $320 per educator if everyone were to attend. If not everybody attends, then that number does go up, but that is what we want. That's what we're proposing to invest in our educators' learning. Why are we doing this over summer? To begin, at the crux of it, the Institute or the Reading Writing Project, that's their model. They want teachers to not be worrying about what's going on in my classroom right now. That I just heard my phone ding, that email came in. They're distracted. And that's why part of the reason why they want to just have teachers, educators, support staff available when there aren't little ones back in the classroom is so they have their undivided attention and can really dig in deep and set that foundation. So this is just a quick quote from the Reading Project. They do it in the summer to help support the renewal of the school's commitment to education that's deeply personal and interpersonal, and that engages teachers and students alike while creating close-knit communities within and across classrooms. So they really want your undivided attention. Additionally, we're also heeding feedback from staff. This on the left-hand side, you will see a survey from our educators on reducing the burden. And as you can see from this graphic, it's a little bit challenging to read, but the, let me see here, the purple line, that's 4th line from the bottom. Maybe it's more of a rose pink. Our teachers, 50% of them said that they want more teacher directed time during their professional learning days. So as a result, we have 9 professional learning days embedded into the calendar next school year. 2 of those days are teacher-led, August 30th and November 8th. And then we also have time for our principals to be able to carry out professional learning that would be supportive of their their school improvement plan. And then we've allocated 4 days at the elementary level and 3 days at the secondary level that are identified as teacher directed, so that we are being more responsive to the educators' feedback that we are getting from them.
The 2 days you meant on August 30th and November 8th are district directed days.
Yes. District. So it's half August 30th is on there twice. I see that. So half and half. Yes. Regardless of educator attendance at the professional learning. So this, I should back up and say that the Teachers College will be coming and joining us for 4 days in August. So those are the days that we have been able to secure, if approved tonight, for them to come here and work with our educators. Regardless if staff are able to attend or not, we will continue to have ongoing support. So that will involve job embedded coaching. So all of our instructional coaches will be in attendance. Our building administrators will be in attendance to be able to help support teachers in real time throughout next school year. We'll also be having lab sites in which an educator will be the expert of the learning and will invite other people in to observe their instructional practice. There'll also be opportunity for them to take over, try some in real time application of the learning, and seek feedback from their colleagues in real time as well. As I mentioned, we want to have a critical mass of individuals who attend this. And again, we have 125 hungry educators. So they will have informal support from their colleagues during collaboration and co-planning time. We would like to be strategic about having optional learning opportunities after school, potentially even on Saturdays, for individuals who want to dig in deeper or who weren't able to be a part of the initial learning. We also envision having asynchronous learning opportunities through book studies, videos, discussions, and then we'll utilize the November 8th Professional Learning Day. We might also find in collaboration with our building principals that they say, we really could collectively need some additional support around English language arts instruction. So why don't we come together on those building directed days if our school improvement plans are so indicating that this is the direction that we want to go in? And they might say, hey, can you provide us with some additional support on those noted days as well? It's a potential option. So our next steps will be to continue to review the RSVPs for the learning opportunities. Again, we have 125 so far since I counted. Those educators, again, are providing us with feedback and are helping us narrow in on our learning objectives. Once we have those learning objectives, we'll then be working with the reading writing project staff developers, as I mentioned earlier, to continue to drill down on our specific needs and goals based on that feedback and data. And then we will be finalizing logistical plans such as specific locations, any materials that are needed, refreshments, et cetera, upon your approval. So with that, it is recommended that the school board approve the English Language Arts Professional Learning Contract with the Reading Writing Project this evening. And if you have any questions before you move into that, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you. Appreciate the time. Dr. Means, anything additional? No, sir. Any board questions or comments? Ms. Fraley?
So I just want you to do some math with me.
Yeah.
You're saying we're hoping to have at least 320 folks there. That would be the goal. That's the number of folks that you'd ideally like to train.
Ideally.
Okay. 108 are signed up.
125.
125, sorry. So less than half. Do we know based on past experience, like when do we get the most signups? Do we see drop-offs once summer starts? That sort of thing.
In all honesty, this is a professional learning that we have never been able to offer in the school district before.
But compared to other professional learning offerings that we've done with teachers, because we always do summer stuff with them.
Typically we see, I would say we typically see half of the people that are eligible.
And we're going to pay the same if half of them are there or all of them are there to Readers Writers Workshop.
And that's part of the RSVP process as well. So if we come back and say to Teachers College that we only have 150 people that have RSVP, so then we can go back and say we need to potentially think about a different contract.
Okay. So I'm having two problems.
Yes.
First, I'll start with, I love Readers Writers Workshop. I actually think it is a fantastic curriculum to get us to achievement.
Mm-hmm.
So fully in support of the curriculum itself. My two problems are, one, we have a consistency issue across the district as it is right now, and only half of people being there and the other half getting some Saturdays, some videos, some this. We're going to have the same consistency issue. And two, if you can go back a couple, where's it gone? To the slide that talked about the stipend, that if we were paying them their per diem, it would cost us $320,000, but if we're only giving them a stipend, we're paying $108,000. So again, my math here, that's $212,000 difference.
Mm-hmm.
And we're saying to teachers, we're going to pay you a third of your daily wage to come in during the summer when it's not mandatory. And I'm just having a hard time with that.
Sure.
Teachers do so much all year long, and this is about making them better teachers and increasing student achievement. And we're saying we're going to pay you a third of what you deserve to be paid. And I know the money issues, so I get it. But this just feels really awful to me. And I would have a very hard time voting to do this, despite knowing that this is what we actually need, because I think it continues to send the message to teachers that you do this because you love the kids, but we're not going to treat you like a professional. And we're not alone. Districts do this all over. So I understand it's not like we're the big bad district and everybody else does it better. I get that. I want to know, is there a way for us to up what we're paying our teachers to be here to see if it increases the number of teachers who come because it makes them feel valued to know that we value the learning that they get because it's going to help kids do better.
I can absolutely talk with Mr. Dixon to see what other funds we do have available to do that. As you mentioned, Ms. Fraley, this is very much in line with what other school districts do as well.
I know. This doesn't make it right. It's why we have a teacher professionalization problem.
Yep. So we did, when we brought forward the ESSER 3 proposal, one of the items within the $250,000 was also taking into consideration
the additional learning,
the stipend that we potentially need to pay our teachers as well to engage in that learning.
Yeah, and maybe that's me. I don't think I realized the math of how little we were going to pay them because I don't think, did we know the numbers?
We had a rough estimate.
Okay, so that's on me then.
And there was similar question was about, do we have feedback from the folks that are choosing not to attend? And if that is that an issue or is it something else? You know, I don't want to throw money at a problem that it wouldn't fix, you know, so to understand like really what is getting in the way, is it capacity? Is it like, you know, the investment?
The feedback that I've gotten from some individuals that are not able to attend, it's not that they don't want to attend. They already have something planned during a portion or that whole entire week. And so they are not able to attend, but wish that they could.
Because I agree, it's really, it's a risk to not have a kind of critical mass right involved in this. Yeah.
So there was a lot of talk today about east-west inequity. Do you have a sense of those 125 that have said yes, if they are spread across all of our different schools, or are there certain buildings that we're hitting that critical mass and others where we're not?
I would say that we have a good representation from all of our elementary schools, and we don't have quite the enrollment yet at our middle schools, but I know that our principals are currently also working on encouraging individuals to participate.
And do you have a sense of why the middle school teachers aren't signing up?
I do not. No, that is something that I did ask the building principals to investigate further.
Mr. Meyer.
Okay, this stuff is not my strength. So, but I have to vote, and you are asking for my vote. And I've learned hard lessons in the past year about being really, really sure what you're voting on, really, really sure how much money it's going to cost. And I'm not really, really sure here. There's no dollar amount in the motion. Dollar amounts are buried in the not buried, but they're in the attachments. There's so many variables that are undetermined about who will enroll from where, from what schools, and my concern is that I vote yes tonight, and then 9 months from now, something comes back to haunt me, and I have to apologize for my vote, which kind of hurts to do that. So to me, this hasn't crossed that threshold that I'm willing to stick my neck out to vote yes, and now it comes back to bite me. You know, my seat number 2, did I do my job later on? There just isn't enough here for me to, as somebody who this is not my expertise, to say, yeah, I'm going to vote, and I'm not quite sure how much money or who's going to use it or what schools they're from or all that stuff. There's just too many things that are sort of kind of built on sand instead of solid foundation.
Dr. Marble, Dr. Means, so we've heard some concerns. Is there a timing that we need to approve this tonight, or what are we up against from a deadline standpoint? So at least the board has options if we were to table it and look for additional information.
So the Teachers College has requested that in order for them to secure their staff on their end, that we are asked to return a signed contract to them by Friday, April 29th. We got the initial contract from them on April 8th, which would have been the Friday before the last meeting, and we wouldn't have had any of the information that we were able to present to you tonight by that time.
Or the board want to proceed? Mr. Mayor.
As a matter of practice, I feel like there's a gun to my head that I have to vote yes, and there hasn't been a lot of time. There hasn't been a prior reading of this proposal at an earlier meeting. Am I correct? I mean, you know, we get a report and then the community hears it. People have time to come back and challenge us about what we're doing, and then we vote at the next meeting. So there's a lot of process that's not done here, and like I said, the past year has been quite a learning experience for me about how things work right now. So it's still, there's a deadline, and that actually is argument against me voting for this because it's been presented in that way where I've kind of painted into a corner on what my options are. It's not you all that did it. I mean, I'm not being critical of people. It's the circumstances. It's tough. You know? Okay, thanks.
Ms. Meadville.
Thank you. I will not be voting in favor of the proposal this evening. I have some concerns, but my major concern is that all of our educators are trained. It's important. It's got to be meaningful for them, and we have to deliver. And this is the way that, you know, the administration is bringing forward this idea that, you know, that we need to use this to deliver, but it's not training all of our team. So I'm asking you if you could possibly we could save this vendor relationship. If you really believe these are the right folks to be training us, could you go back to them and say, you know, we need to have a couple different dates. I know that might change the proposal. You know, we have this money to spend with our team to train them and to help the students. And that's what I would prefer, unless you believe you should find someone else.
And is this something by policy where we're supposed to have competitive proposals? I don't.
If I may chime in with that, Yeah, go
ahead.
I was going to say that the competitive proposal process would have taken place when the curricular resource was adopted.
Yeah.
So this is in response to supporting of this particular curricular resource with the professional learning from that organization.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Riley.
Yeah, so I'll be really clear. I don't think we should be using anybody else. They're the highest quality. They're going to help us get to where we need to on the academic front. I'm really glad you talked about making sure special education teachers are involved, reading specialists are involved, ELL specialists, et cetera. I'm curious, Dr. Means and Dr. Marble, if they have ever, you know, used an approach of like a small team approach so that every school has to have X number of people there covering, you know, a reading specialist, a special ed teacher, at least 2 grade level, whatever it is, so that we know, like from a consistency standpoint, that again, every school had the same opportunity, like access, and then the school leaders, are the school leaders there? Like,
we worked out a model where there would have been a special day for the school leaders.
Okay,
for
so
the principals.
I feel like I saw that on your whiteboard at some point. so like I could get behind something like that, and then maybe the other teachers, because I don't want to like say to a teacher who has said, pick me, I want to be there, that we don't let them opt in. But I think we have to think about this from a strategic accountability perspective in terms of if a school leader says, here are the people from my team that I am deeming to be accountable, to use your word, Ms. Neufeld, for our school's results. And that basically it means they're going to have to do some sort of train the trainer, maybe during one of their August things. And I know we have community members that actually do work for them. I'd love to know like what their reaction to doing a little bit of a different model might be if they worry that the
Fidelity.
thank you, fidelity. It wasn't efficacy. If the fidelity of the training would still be there. I really am struggling with the 125 out of 300 and some. I'm struggling with the $100 a day, though. I appreciate your point, Mr. Phillips. If it's not the money, I'm not saying we throw more money, but like there's just something inherently bothersome to me about $100 a day. But I don't know what you're considering a day. Is a day 4 hours or is a day 8 hours?
Six.
Six.
Right in the middle.
Okay. I'm just saying my kid would make more money than that at their summer job. And they're 18 years old. So that feels.
I'm not trying to be dismissive of
I
that
hear
fact, but I also think about the investment and the personal knowledge gain that I'll be able to then take and have that transaction in my classroom.
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Like, and if we can have those extra folks go, but I really am first and foremost trying to figure out how do we make sure that every single school has a core team that has all the pieces and not just a random assortment that can move us forward, and that school team has ownership for everybody else getting up to speed. So when my colleague next door to me in second grade isn't doing what they need to be doing on Readers Writers Workshop, that I feel some accountability to that. That's my reaction.
Dr. Joseph Baker.
I've been struggling with this conundrum of kind of the, and I don't know what the critical mass is. I think you're explaining this in a way that resonates with me, and would certainly invest in more resources going towards this to figure out and leverage what that critical mass is. I also understand what they are articulating as their training model. They may or may not be flexible. They are who we want to go with. I understand that why. And that teachers don't want, what teachers want in terms of their professional learning and space in the school year is not necessarily where we can guarantee that they're in place to do it. So we're at that conundrum. So I would be comfortable investing more resources here. We know this is a priority. We know we want this implemented really well. And if we need to put more money, if that's indeed the issue, towards the curriculum, I would certainly support that. The creative solution of like, how do we get that critical mass, I would leave up to the folks who have to noodle through that situation.
So do I understand correctly, this is the $250,000 that was set aside for the ESSER funds? Or this is a portion of that?
No, the contract in front of you is for $85,900, which would come from the approved $250,000 ESSER funds.
Plus the $108,000?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're using a really large portion of our training dollars for this particular 4-day training.
That is correct. And 5 days for our administrators.
And I hear what you're saying, Dr. Jessup Banger, and Ms. Fraley, I understand that they may not be flexible. This sounds like it's the right group to go with, but they may not be flexible. But I mean, have we explored other options like a 2-day training that we could do during professional days where teachers are all going to be present? It just feels like a lot of money and a huge amount of importance, and we're hitting less than 50% of the people who should be there.
All options are on the table for how we utilize those 2 district days that we have allocated to us. But again, we're also, to use your words, Dr. Jessup Banger, we're also kind of in a conundrum because our educators have also said, give us our days because we want to be able to use our days as we see fit. So we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place as well. And that's why we're leaning in on summer, because our educators have said, we need these days during the school year to do what we need to do. So let us be. So we're trying to be respectful of that.
So I think our next meeting is May 9th. And so that would be about a month after they've given us this contract. Do you think you can buy us till the 10th? Because I know payment's not due until the services are rendered. So till August, it's really just a commitment to go forward with them. So it's not really like an invoice per se, but I just wonder if we could talk to them and ask them for a little bit of flexibility as we really want to make it the best that we can. Just thinking about it.
I'd love to know what they think of this conundrum, quite frankly, because they're pretty hardcore. They're not going to say 2 days.
Right.
It's not a flexible model for a reason. Making it shorter is not going to make it more equally effective. And I think having the days in a row is actually really important, which is why I assume you are doing summer. But I would be curious their reaction to small group model or, and the other thing I just want to bring up too, though, and I can't remember who said this, the middle school question. We have to make sure, based on the scores that we're seeing, that middle school is strongly represented and that we're getting the right people there. So this isn't just who wants to do it, like how are we having conversations with people that we really need to be there to, to just say like, this is why we need you there. And I understand teachers they're exhausted.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that was communication that did go out to building principals as well to round up the troops and encourage them to be a part of this learning.
So this is optional and we're going to look at them and say, we really need you there. And we'll remember. So that doesn't feel good to me. The optional that, well, is it? Okay. Yeah, it's just another source of discomfort for me about this. Ms. People.
Thank you. I happy to make a motion to table this. If administration can come back to us by the next meeting with a proposal, but it obviously would have to include the items that we're talking about this evening. So, we have to have the people trained that we need trained. Understanding there are logistical challenges, but we need this for the students. So I'm sure we can figure something out. Can we count on you to do that? If the board so directs you.
Oh boy, there's another optional, right? Okay.
If the board so directs us, I can reach out to the Teachers College tomorrow and ask if there's any sort of flexibility in postponing the date. But in the event that they're not, we might be forfeiting our opportunity to work with them this summer. I just want to put that out there.
But I appreciate you asking the question, not just about the date, but about we understand how strident they're about the model for good reason. And this is where we are right now. What if we did these small targeted groups, and do they have experience where other folks have done it? I'm sort of curious too, is part of our problem that we're scheduling this too late? Is part of our problem, not like you haven't had a million other things to do, please. But we can't forfeit the opportunity, right? I'm trying to put myself in your seat right now and thinking no, this is the most important thing we will do for reading all year. So what is our best plan B?
So just in terms of how we've scheduled, we actually were in front of the line nationally.
Okay.
So as soon as we received the curriculum instruction and assessment audit, Dr. Marble, Ms. Ebert, and I said, call Teacher College now.
Get on their schedule, yes.
We put out the alert, we need their help. It was also based on the feedback from staff who said during the height of the pandemic, we adopted a literacy program that may be one of the most complicated in the country and requires training. So in terms of timing, they've worked with us. The timing's actually ideal, and we're one of their preferred clients for this training session this summer. I think that as I'm listening to everything, if you're giving us permission to use extra money to meet the per diem threshold, thank you. And we can definitely come back with with providing the per diem. That's per your direction. I can share with you my experience. I've implemented this curriculum, so I was glad to hear that we had it when I arrived. I've implemented it in 2 other districts, and at some point, staff members are asked to participate in the summer. So there becomes this critical point where you do have to make the request of your staff to make themselves available in the summer for this training. I think the per diem offer will make things more appealing to staff members, but their model is one in which you can't do it in pieces. The other logistic part of it is we're trying to be responsive to staff members who've said, of those 9 professional learning days, we want control of those days. So there was a slide that Dr. showed where the district has 2 of the 9 days. That's very abnormal. Most district leaders, in fact, Dr. Marble said, who came up with this? Why are we doing this? The feedback came from the Superintendent Teacher Advisory Council, where staff members said, get out of our way. Don't make us sit through learning sessions that we're in the back of our heads thinking we want to get back to our classrooms. So when you look at that chart, we have given those days back to the majority of the days are teacher directed. And then there are, I think, 2 or 3 days that are principal directed that should coincide with their school growth plans. We have 2 days. We have really a half day in August, and then we have the other day in November. That's it. So it's logistically difficult for us to go back. I think that's the challenge. That's the barrier. Even if we wanted to go back to Teachers College, we only have 1.5 days. The August 29th day is when we all gather and build community. So that's a half day of training. And then the other day is November 8th. So there's the tension there as well. Do we want to be responsive and listen to teachers and give them what they've asked? If you do so, then that ability to provide the training has escaped us.
Can I ask a question? So you said having, done this in other districts, is the expectation then if a teacher does not come to the 4-day training this summer, that they come next summer?
Yes. So that's a great question.
So just in terms of expectation setting, because that might also help us beef up numbers this year, because it's like, I got to come this summer or next summer.
You typically have to run it 2 or 3 summers in a row.
Right.
And eventually the numbers shrink in terms of who needs to be there. But ideally, you hope to receive at least 65% of your staff the first phase, and then you catch another 25%. And then typically the 3rd year, because you're always hiring new people anyway. And so that 3rd year, you're catching up new hires or people who want to be refreshed. So it's typically a 3-year process. In year 4, then Teachers College will have some type of they have a coaching model where they have people who will come out and look at the teachers and implementing the strategy in their classrooms and give them feedback, which is amazing. It's really helpful.
And just to be clear, the expense you're asking us to approve tonight is just for 1 year.
It's for the train. It's the contract of the $85,000.
But I mean, you're saying we have to do it for
But this would be for year 1. Yes. We'll be coming back to you for year 2 and year 3 as part of our strategy.
Ms. Meadville.
Thank you. Well, along those lines then, if the strategy and training includes coaching, could we know that in the next phase and plan for that?
Yep, so part of the proposal this evening was that job embedded coaching that will be ongoing throughout this next school year. And that will continue to take place year after year. And it'll be based on the principles of what is foundationally taught during these professional learning days in the summer. So that will be reinforced. One other thing that I should mention is one of the things that the Teachers College then does with the building principals, the building leaders on that 5th day is they sit down and help them devise in what ways they're going to give specific feedback around different instructional practices. They help them identify a cohesive look-fors so that when they go into classrooms and they're doing observations, they know what key learning pieces they're looking for and then how to give important feedback to the teachers during that process. And that's why it's also critical that the principals engage in that learning with our teachers for those first 4 days so that they have a working knowledge and can be able to say, yes, this is going to be critical for our work with our teachers moving forward. So not only will they be getting critical feedback from our instructional coaches, but then also from our building principals as well.
And are they going to be physically on site during these coaching sessions after the initial training?
So our coaches are district coaches, and then we will have coaches from the Teachers College that will come in and work with our coaches throughout the year and help provide feedback to our coaches on how they can provide better feedback to our teachers. I don't want to use the word fidelity, but it's like a fidelity check. How are you then taking the learning and bringing it to life? And what might be some additional opportunities based on my observations if I'm the coach for additional targeted professional learning in this particular building, because it might differ. One school might be honing in really well in one skill, maybe one grade level's doing really well, but other grade levels aren't. So that fidelity check, so to speak, will be able to provide more targeted feedback to specific schools, specific grade levels on how to better serve the students in that building or grade level.
And would this be done during the day or during the professional learning time, or how would we, if we're having some struggles here scheduling these professionals into our district, what does that look like?
So a lot of that work happens during the school day when there are actual students in the building. So when teachers are on their prep time, they might sit down then with a coach and work with them during their preparation time that they have. So it will come down to the logistics of that, but I'm not so worried about that aspect of it because it is more job embedded and can be done when there are children in the building.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll just say from my perspective, we're a policy and governance board, and we've hired Dr. Means. He's hired most of his staff at this point. I'm not a curriculum expert. I know some of us are. But we've heard that this is the right place to be, the right group to use. I'm not aware of any concerns about them. So from my perspective, I have to put my faith in Dr. Means and his staff that this is the recommendation. Our staff needs the training. We know this is incredibly important. We hear from our community regularly that we need to do more for our teachers and to support our teachers and give them the training to be successful. I would certainly ask that we encourage teachers from all of our schools to do this. The more, the better. I can appreciate that it might take 2 or 3 years to do it. And also any training can't be a one and done type thing anyway, because we have continuous staff turnover and new teachers coming in anyway. So that's important. I certainly would hope that we'd reach out to any schools that are not participating highly and encourage them. And I would expect Dr. Means and his staff to dive into any issues of why one student is, or one school is lagging behind the others. If that's the case, maybe it's not. But, we certainly want all schools to have an equal chance at this. So I'm comfortable supporting it. I think there's some very valid concerns raised tonight and thoughts, but at the end of the day, we hire a superintendent and his staff to do the job. And I have no reason to believe that if this is their recommendation, that this is the best route to go. I don't see another alternative. I know there's scheduling challenges, but you're not going to make all teachers happy. Some will want it during the summer, some will want it during the school year. I can appreciate that. Different teachers have different lives, and that's difficult. But this seems like the best path forward for me.
I think the initial information went out in February to staff. The initial dates were shared with staff.
March.
Mm-hmm. So I think in defense of the staff, there's some staff members who've already made their summer plans by March. So I don't take the number of staff members who have signed up as a reflection of their unwillingness to participate. I think it's just people make summer plans, and that I believe that's maybe a week and a half before they have to officially report back to work. So that's typically a time where teachers try to squeeze in one last vacation with their family. I think that's very legitimate. That's why our strategy is to offer this opportunity for multi-year will.
If I may also offer up, one of the other constraints in terms of when we would be offering this is summer school. So we know that we employ a lot of our current staff in summer school, and we have 1 week right after the school year ends. Teachers that teach during the school year and then want to or are engaging in summer school need some time to regroup, prepare for summer school. Then they have 6 weeks of summer school, and then we're in August already. And so that's another one of the constraints and reasons why we landed on that particular time frame.
So we've got a lot of information, a lot of conversation. Are there any motions that people want to make, either to change what we're voting on or delay it, or are we moving forward with the motion as is?
My understanding is we are voting tonight only on the contract, not on stipend per diem. It's just the contract for.
No, but you've provided great feedback, so thank you. We will bring back a proposal to pay people their per diem. Thank you. I think it's hard for us as administrators to, and I think we're getting a feel for one another and how we operate. We want to provide staff members the maximum dollar amount. However, we're also constrained by a budget. So if your feedback to us is no, let's give our staff the per diem, that just know we are aligned. We want that to happen for staff as well.
My clear direction is I would like the team trained that are in front of our children, and they deserve the training. And we've put roadblocks in the way for them to get this training. That's how I'm looking at it. And we have to figure out how to provide the training for adopting this curriculum, whether it's this curriculum or the next curriculum training, whatever it is. We've got to have a way for them to have professional learning that's meaningful and timely. 4 years before all the staff is trained in reading? No. No, I cannot support that. Maybe that's the way it should be, but or the way other people do it, but we have a lot of work to do, and we are counting on our team. And we promise to train them for this curriculum to make an impact as soon as they can, because the one student is going to be gone the next year. So I
share your concerns, Ms. Millfeld. I really do. And when I look at, again, our teachers are telling us during those professional learning days that they want to be self-directed. And I look at those days, and I had this conversation with Dr. Means. I look at those days saying, that's really valuable time that we have a captive audience with our educators, but our educators are telling us, we don't want your professional learning. So that's the conundrum.
I think we're blending concepts.
Yeah.
So what we've discussed is the model from Teachers College.
Yes.
Is a 4-day, 6-hour-a-day training model.
Yes.
So my question is, and we've already answered the question, where do we have 4 consecutive days for 6 hours of training in our calendar? It does not exist. It just does not exist. And so the only model that I'm aware of is what we've presented. That's number one. Number two, it's really difficult because teachers leave and retire, transfer, they leave. So to assume that we'll always have 100% of all of our teachers trained annually off of one training session is difficult. You constantly, I think that's one of our challenge, candidly. We haven't been consistent to say, here's the professional learning we're going to offer you. And so in past districts where I have worked and we have had Teachers College, we have been consistent to say, if you come and work for us, we will train you in this model. And that actually becomes a drawing card. That becomes a recruiting tool for those staff members to say, oh, I don't have to fend for myself. There will be an annual opportunity for me to learn. So I think actually it's a benefit for us to say on an annual basis, there will be an opportunity for those who either need to be trained for the first time or who individuals who are looking for a refresher. We're continuously offering it. Right now, we can't point to a menu of professional learning that we offer to the district to strengthen teachers to say this is what we offer. That's something that I know Dr. Marble, Ms. Ebert's trying to work on right now, but that's actually a very exciting component to this work.
So have we considered a different way of structuring the calendar so that when we do have professional learning for different curriculum adoptions, that we can actually have the team trained?
I think it's difficult if we're trying, I'll go back to that slide that Dr. Marble showed. It's hard if we're honoring the request of staff who have said, please allow us to have our teacher directed days. So if there are 9 days total, I believe we've given teachers the ability to direct 3 to 4. I think elementary, we gave them 4, secondary they have 3. And then the principals in the schools have directed days. So it becomes one of those issues. Are we going to honor the request of the staff who said they want their directed days, or are we going to mandate those days for training? We could just take those days and say, no, we're going to mandate training these days. I think staff would have a problem with that model as well.
Well, I'm asking you, Dr. Means, to rethink it. And if we're going to create a per diem, why don't we create a calendar which offers professional learning dollars to the staff for different curriculum, which they have wanted us to bring into the district to better things? I'm just asking us to rethink it. I understand we are under current constraints in this process. This is how we're currently doing it. And we are here at the 11th hour, not having a read of this, a report of this to the community before we're voting on this. And we're having this conversation. I want us to be proactive. I want to honor your request to create some systems that work for us, that really allow our team to be trained. They deserve to be trained, and they deserve the time and the money behind them to be trained.
Mike, I wish I can give you a guarantee that even if we offered the per diem for staff members, that we would get 100% participation. I don't think that's ever going to happen with staff. That's just difficult. So it goes back to what Mr. Phillips stated earlier. I think it's clearly, it's something that we should explore and we want to explore, but even with that benefit, I am not confident that we would have 100% of our staff commit to summer training if they have other family or other commitments that they've made in the summer. That's always a challenge.
I know, because that's in our current structure. So I think I'm not able to articulate very well this evening, perhaps, but what I'm asking is create professional learning opportunities during the year. If we're already going to, with all of the things that we've said, honor teacher preparedness time. I don't know quite how to do it. Maybe it's taken out of professional learning, PLTs. I don't know. But I'm sure we can figure out a way to invest in our team during the school year And the per diem, we could put the per diem money toward that. I'm not sure, but I know there's a better way to train our team to be able to deliver this curriculum that they want and that we promise to deliver in a meaningful, accountable way. So our students get the benefit. I'm sure we can do it.
Any other board questions or comments before we go to the community? All right, why don't we open it up for community comment? We can always come back for board discussion. If there's anyone in the room that would like to speak on this topic specifically, please come forward, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes. And I'm sorry, if you're online and you'd like to speak on this, please raise your hand and we'll get to you after the folks in the room.
Joe McClure, 772 116th Street. Mr. Alf, I am very much in favor of teaching for our staff, because ultimately that comes down to hopefully better educating our students, which is the important part of this board. Looking at what's put online, however, I do have some concerns about the procedure was put in place, because it looks like we may have already entered into some sort of contract based on what's listed here. As I read this, it says your district has agreed to purchase services totaling $85,900. These services include, and it goes on to list them. At the bottom of it, it goes into a cancellation policy and to what the clauses are if we cancel this contract. I am certainly hoping this is not the case. And we mentioned earlier about the Abbott contract. And this is starting to feel a little bit like we're revisiting Abbott in a different form. I'm hoping that we have not entered into some sort of verbal agreement with this company before this is actually brought to the board. And now we're being asked to approve something that was basically essentially done. I hope that is not the case.
Hi, Michelle Hughes, 2021 North 119th Street. I have talked with many friends of mine that are educators, family that are educators, and everyone says, and I call it the Lucy program, because I can never remember the woman's last name. And everybody says, this is a great, oh, your son is so lucky to have this. And my son, who's in elementary school, could benefit from this program, is a poor reader. He was a poor reader before COVID. He's a poorer reader since COVID. And I, as part of his at-home learning during COVID, got to see the Lucy program because I sat next to him at the dining room table and did schoolwork with him, 6 hours a day. And I'm watching all the different components of this. Since then, I've immersed myself in it. He's asking him questions about it, he's brought his Chromebook, you can see all the things. And it's like, okay, it just seems really fragmented and choppy. And I see a teacher trying to teach this, having no training on it, trying to teach it to 25 little humans. And how is that possible? Like, I can't imagine doing my job, having to learn it as I go. And so, long story short, my son is still a poor reader. And some of the things that have been utilized in the last year or two has been, because my son is such a poor reader, he tends to do a lot of things just books on tape or listening to a story. So my son is not even reading in this great reading curriculum. So we got to get these teachers trained, because my son is now going to be in 6th grade. A 6th grader who's probably, and I'm not a teacher, reading at a 3rd grade reading level. How will he be successful in his life if he can't read? That's a very basic need. I would hate for him to graduate TOSA with a 3rd grade reading level. So we need to, train these teachers and make this program like it's meant to be. I mean, I get it. We were between a rock and a hard spot. We bought onto this program. We didn't intend COVID to happen, but now we have a lot of kids that maybe don't know how to read like my son. And that is just unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like there's no more comments in the room. Jamie, is there anyone online?
Yeah, we have a few. Kendra Kovar. You have the microphone. Kendra, I'm going to have to promote you to panelist. So I'm going to let somebody else go before you, and then I'll call on you next. Deb Sellers, you have the microphone. Please state your name and address.
Hello, Deb Sellers, N15 West 26510 Gulfview Lane, Pewaukee, Wisconsin. I'm a teacher at Underwood Elementary and vice president of the WEA. The survey you were referring to, I believe, is a survey that we put out through the WEA. And if I can state from that survey, 65% of the staff wanted additional days off instead of the PD days. 60% wanted to eliminate the educator effectiveness program. 50% more wanted time off of the directed PD days, and another 50% wanted more aid support. I also would like to thank the board for your comments, especially Leon Fraley, and treating us like professionals. And this is a tremendous decision and program that I believe all teachers would want to be a part of. Having it in the summer not only is a time restraint in cutting into summer time off, but also for teachers with children having to pay for childcare. I think another factor in this is providing childcare for teachers who attend this training. There's other pays that teachers, things that they do that they don't get paid for. For instance, you talked about a book study. Would that be additional pay also? Time away from family. We can list all the different ways, but thank you for your consideration and especially for increasing the pay. I'm sure that would help. But please consider childcare for teachers that need it. Thanks.
Okay, next, Kendra Kovar, you have the microphone. Just be aware you're a panelist, so your video is showing. You'll need to unmute.
Okay. Kendra Kovar, I'm an 8th grade teacher at Whitman Middle School. My address is 2405 Merlin Way, Brookfield, Wisconsin. I'm just chiming in to address the minimal middle school interest in the literacy professional development. There's kind of a question why the middle school people aren't. Several things. First of all, there's just a low interest across the district in professional development days because past professional development was very, very poorly planned. It was very last minute. We'd get the agenda the night before. And I know there's lots of other things we can dig up from the past. Many people are looking forward to the future, but there's a really bad taste in TOSA teachers' mouths regarding past professional development opportunities. Also, March is kind of a late notification for the people who already have summer plans. A lot of teachers get summer jobs and they definitely pay more than $100 a day. So there's a conflict of financial there that's been addressed. As far as looking at middle school, specifically Whitman has had a terrible year. You know about administration changes, you know about an email that came out about the physical contact and the things that are going on at Whitman. Whitman teachers have been beat down pretty badly this year and have gone through multiple administrators. Given that, I know a minimum of 10 people who are looking for other positions. So if they're looking for other positions, they're not going to be signing up for your professional development. Last week, we found out that 3-point-something FTE positions are being cut from Whitman. So last year, it was shared with us what our job assignments would potentially look like next year. Personally, I'm an 8th grade science teacher. I found out that I'm being asked to teach an RTI class on academic support, which fortunately I'm comfortable with because I also have a reading license. And I have some experience in that, but there are some teachers that are being asked to teach like 3 social studies and then an English class, or there's teachers who are being asked to teach 3 classes at one grade level and another class at another grade level. This has happened at Longfellow for like the last 3 years, so they've been kind of going through that. But when our positions, and I know it's because of lower enrollment, but I think when you're looking at the people who directly impact kids in front of them on a daily basis, You really need to think about what their job assignments are looking like. There's one teacher that, because of all the switches, is going to be teaching 3 different varied math classes throughout the day. So just having all of those job changes, the late information coming in about the registration coming in March, lots of people looking for new positions, just given the status of some of the trauma that the whole district's been through this year. I think that might be addressing some of your middle school low interest in professional development for the summer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is, I just have the name Laura here. So if you could state your name and address, please. You have the microphone.
Hi, my name is Laura, Wind Passenger. I'm 11805 West Oxford Place here in Tosa. I first and foremost, I just got over COVID, and so I spent a great deal of time in my week of isolation reviewing all of the board meetings to prepare myself for a position that I've volunteered for in the community. And I do want to say to the board as a whole, I feel from some people, and I can understand where you've had a lot of learning lessons in the last year, and you may be hesitant to make this decision. But it is the same 3 to 4 squeaky wheels that show up meeting after meeting that are, I would assume, making you question your ability to support this type of a decision. And as President Dolman explained, that is why you have Dr. Means and his staff, and you do need to trust in them and their recommendations. And I can't help but feel like there is uncertainty because of the criticism that has been brought forward by 3 people who are, the same 3-4 people, whatever, and they're here again tonight. You guys have been elected again. People were not elected, and you do have a lot of more community support than you probably realize behind you. It's always those few squeaky wheels. And then second of all, so I guess what I'm trying to say there is don't let that get in the way of making a decision that sounds like it's a really good opportunity for our schools that are clearly hurting, that you need to just put some faith in the people that are hired to do that, and move forward with this decision tonight. Second of all, Deb Sellers took the words out of my mouth. I was thinking a large amount of teachers that I know have children, and that's an issue, is childcare. The rec department has an amazing summer program. Perhaps they could have extra staff come in for that week to help cover some of the teachers' staff, or perhaps teachers with students could be given more of a stipend. I don't know. I mean, there's all sorts of different ways, and I don't think that's even on the table to be decided tonight. From what I understand, it is just the contract, and I guess I would hope that you aren't frightened by those squeaky wheels and would move forward with this very important program that sounds like it would be really good for our teachers. So thank you all.
Okay, next is Katie Wilkes. You have the microphone. Please state your name and address.
Katie Wilkes, 1236 Woodside Street, Heartland, Wisconsin. I am the president of the Wauwatosa Education Association, a special ed teacher at Underwood Elementary School, and a parent to a SK STEM student at Underwood. I think it would be wonderful. This is exactly what we've asked you for, is for training. As Kendra Kovar mentioned, I think people have a bad taste in their mouth due to the way that over the last few years, professional development has been thrown together at the last minute. And that's where I think on our survey that came back, as people wanted their own time to do it because they were not really seeing the benefit to the stuff that we were getting on those days. I also want to speak that the $100 was a humongous shock. And while I do understand that that's been past practice, we have to move on from past practice. As we've agreed to with the new salary schedule, we cannot continue to undervalue the educators that are in front of your children every day. $100 will not even pay for somebody to watch my children all day, as Leon stated. I currently cannot attend, not that I do not want to attend, but that is the week of the Wisconsin State Fair. Many teachers and students work at the fair, where I am making over $300 to $400 to continue to work there. That is just not a decision that we can make as a family for me to not do that over getting paid $100. I do want to attend. I do think it will be meaningful. I just do not think the timing is great for a lot of people, as what was explained by others. Thank you again for your conversation, and I do hope that we can come to an agreement on a couple of those things.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Caitlin Lemke. You have the microphone. Please state your name and address.
Caitlin Lemke, 7440 Melrose Avenue. I just wanted to add, well, I know you can't answer questions, but I used to be a teacher and we had a development week. It was like the week before school every year, and teachers knew it was coming. They could arrange childcare. And especially if you're going to pay them their per diem rate, it backed up nicely to run into the school year for childcare. It was convenient. It built morale. It let people interact with each other before the school year. I don't know if you would consider building a calendar that would accommodate that. Maybe not this year, because I know that time is running out and you have this scheduled, but for future use, like a calendar that even all grade levels could benefit from training. I think that the burnout also is from a lack of training, and especially if we're hearing that the trainings weren't useful. Good training helps a teacher know where their footing is and have a good year. And if you can back it very close to the school year, they're oftentimes motivated to start using that training immediately. So just some ideas. It kind of goes with what Ms. Mufeld was saying. So I hope you'll consider that. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was the last online attendee. We have no more hands raised.
Thank you, Jim. So that'll close public comment on this item. Back to the board. Go ahead, Dr. Means.
Dr. Marble, do you mind just sharing the logic behind the dates that were selected and why they were selected?
Again, the dates that were selected were one, we were up against the constraint of summer school, so that eliminated June, all of July. And then in terms of the availability with the organization, Teachers College, these were the dates based on the dates in August that we gave them, that they were able to accommodate a training for us.
I think one last piece was, so I think the last speaker made a great comment of, can you back it up to the week before staff returns? I've had feedback on both ends of that model. Some staff members love that model where it's backed up to the week before you report to work. Some staff members will say, I don't want that. I need a break. So give me maybe early August, we can have the training. Allow me to have one last breath of summer before I have to come back officially, and then I'll dive in. So it's really, it's really a preference issue. I have heard through staff members that we're dealing with a legacy issue, and we can't ignore it, that the legacy of our past professional learning opportunities haven't been as high quality. So that's why I'm thankful that Dr. Marble and Ms. Ebert, I think it's kind of unique that we've planned all the way out and communicated dates in March. That's unique for us.
Yep. And I will say that we communicated the dates out as soon as we had them from the Teachers College. So unfortunately, it was March because that was the earliest that they were able to give us any sort of level of commitment that they could accommodate the dates that we had provided to them. So
this is great feedback. The feedback of the board is supportive of the per diem rate. That's amazing news, and we're very thankful. Great feedback on childcare.
That was something we talked about.
And we talked about
Yep.
childcare, but we're committed to it. That there'll be a cost, but we're committed to it. I think our logistical challenge continues to be, and we can go back and ask Teachers College if they can spread out the 24 hours of training in different segments versus a compact, more 4-day session. That's the sense I'm hearing.
So what I'm hearing is that our biggest barrier to getting people to come is our past performance on these events. So I think the best way to get enrollment up, so to speak, is to do this and do it really well. So I wouldn't, if the model is 4 days in a row is the best way to do it, I would discourage us from moving away from that. If that's what the experts say is the right thing to do, and that's what our teachers want, then let's do it. We can always explore different dates for following years. We know we won't get 100% this year, that's okay. But let's do it really well this year if it goes forward. Because if we don't, then that's just continues the legacy issue that we've had. And if we don't do it at all, I'm even more concerned about that. But any other board comments or questions before we move to a vote? Mr. Meyer.
Just to be clear, I have a great deal of certainty that the total cost of this is uncertain. And that will be the basis for my vote. Thank you.
And it is uncertain because there have been costs added this evening from the suggestion from your willingness to go to per diem to us as childcare. So we share the uncertainty and we don't like being uncertain, but you're also giving us the chart. There are a lot of charges that are being provided to us at the administrative level. You want us to provide a really strong professional learning opportunity, and we're everything that you've shared this evening, we're in alignment with you and we want to do it. It's just there are a lot of different barriers, and we'll try to be flexible and meet all the needs that we can as much as we can throughout this deliberation.
But just to be clear, tonight we're just voting on the contract, not the per diem, not the childcare. Those are
yes. We'll bring the per diem later, and we'll bring the cost for childcare.
So those variable costs are not being voted on.
They're not being voted on this evening. There will be an opportunity for you to vote on them later.
Thank you.
So are we suggesting it's a favorable thing to vote on this contract tonight and then reject the per diems and the childcare at a later date and pull the rug out from under the whole thing?
I haven't heard anyone suggest that.
Yeah, so I'll just respond to that, seeing so I'm one of the folks that talked about adding money here. I wouldn't see it that way so much as what people have committed to date is what's on the table. So we would not be taking anything away from anyone. So there's no pulling out of the rug.
Oh yeah, there is. But we'll
if you just let Ms. Fraley finish.
So I think what's tough about this is that we can't not train teachers on this before the start of the school year. And we can't have the perfect outcome, which is everybody's there for all 4 days, et cetera. So I think where I'm landing right now is we need to do this. Our students deserve it. Our teachers have asked for it. We need to figure out with Teachers College, based on what they're proposing, how do we get the highest return on our investment for the people who come. So I'm most interested in, of the people that are there, how do we maximize them? How do we truly figure out how to have the biggest impact by school, of the participants? because while I don't love every part of this, not doing it from my perspective is not an option. And I would also say that as much as I'd love flexibility, this is not a program that has a lot of flexibility. That's actually what makes it a really strong program, is that you have to like literally be in it, to be going through it like in real time with real data, with real student work, norming. And so I will admit that I am shifting my own perspective on this, knowing that if I'm looking at my two options, I'm going to support getting 100 and hopefully more. I'd love 65% if I had to throw a percentage. How do we maximize the folks that we get there? And what is Teachers College recommendation for when they've had a situation like this? Like what is the average percent of staff they get in a typical year? Like, how do you maximize the day and a half you do have that's district-led PD moving forward?
And I will just add, I don't want to use the term train the trainer because that's a very specific and
hard to do with this.
Exceptionally hard to do with this. So I'll use the term maybe first wave adopters that we can continue to leverage. Ambassadors, there we go. To leverage their learning and their expertise then to provide different learning opportunities for all educators, quite frankly, those that attend and those that don't attend, to be those early first wave ambassadors of some of this foundational learning. Absolutely.
Mr. Meyer, do you have something else?
Sure. So we vote tonight to let the camel put his nose and two legs in the tent. And we believe that if the cost of the other two legs is too high, we'll be able to vote no later. Now, you know, when you use that proverb, you're arguing a conclusion, but we really don't know what the additional cost will be. And we really don't know what the opportunity cost is to those additional costs, what we won't buy because we're buying those additional things. So I just am not going to vote yes with those certain uncertainties. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Justine?
I'm going to vote yes because we need to provide this professional development. I'm trusting you as professionals to figure out the best way to do that. In voting no, if I were to take that stance and 7 of my colleagues were, we would be failing the students. We're not going to fail the students.
Any other, go ahead.
Students first.
Yes, sure. That's quite an accusation to say that to be responsible with taxpayer dollars that we're failing the students. So I take some offense at that. I think this foolish trust that we've done for years has hurt the students. And I'm done trusting like that. I was a part of it. I'm not going to be a part of it anymore.
Any other board comments before we move towards the vote? Ms. Newman, please call the roll. Oh, sorry, Ms. Newfield, I didn't see your hand. I apologize.
Motion to table until May 9th meeting.
Second.
Any discussion to table until the May 9th meeting?
And again, I'm, asking for this motion to give the administration more time. We've had a great, robust discussion. I don't know if things are gonna change. I'm not sure, but at least I just want you to have the opportunity to come back, considering we've had this robust discussion, and see what we can do, see what the vendor would like us to do. Maybe we'll receive more feedback from the staff and the team. And, I just like that opportunity.
Sure. That's fair. And so Dr. Marble, I that's so fair from Ms. Meadville. So just so we can talk about it out loud and very transparently, what it would mean if we tabled, we would have to go back to Teachers College and ask them to give us more time to talk through other alternatives, and then give us until May 10th or 11th to sign the contract. Is that how this would play out?
I assume that that's how it would play out. I would have to have a conversation with our contacts at Teachers College to find out what exactly their next level is, but I feel like it's a fair,
Very fair.
it's a fair request.
And just, I'm sorry, Mr. Doman, I'm just this is the kind of conversation we would have inside our offices, right? So let's just be transparent. And so to meet board members' needs as well, there's been a request or a statement of, we're not quite sure what the costs are going to be. So what that would ideally, because I think that's good feedback from the board, ideally then we would bring all the costs together at once instead of in piecemeal. Because I get the sense that the board is a little apprehensive about that as well. Would if we tabled and if Teacher College was cooperative, would the May 9th meeting also give you enough time to work with the business office to put together maybe options of costs and look at the totality of costs instead of it dribbling in?
Yes.
Because I think the feedback, as I'm listening to the board, that's a concern, that costs will dribble in and you really don't know what the total cost is and it's not upfront.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Riley?
Just your gut reaction. Do you have any concern that we would lose our dates?
It's looming in my head. Yes.
There's a strong possibility.
Yes.
But we'll try.
Right. I'm saying we could get other dates though.
No. We'll lose the dates for 2022. But if nothing else, then we'll definitely work hard to get in front of the line for 2023.
Yes.
So I'm sincere in this. I'm not trying to game this to stall to delay or anything like that. Before the meeting, we were asked whether we were available for an executive session later this week. So if you tomorrow call this vendor and say, are we still able to do this if we decide May 9th? If the answer is no, you better tell us this week or we're gonna pull your opportunity. Then if we could agenda a vote with that understanding of that new information later this week, still we might not have any more certainty about costs, but we wouldn't have uncertainty about whether we're completely foregoing the opportunity.
I think Ms. Meadville's direction, and I appreciate it, was let's talk to Teachers College and figure out how we can provide the 24 hours of training in a different model. Why does it have to be in a 4-day block? Are you hearing the same direction of how can we provide the training differently?
Well, to be fair, Ms. Marble, I said.
And I understand
I
Dr.
respect
Marble is
whatever.
saying they're not going to shift, but I think the request has been, let's try. Let's at least try to have the conversation. And I don't mind trying to persuade Teacher College. They may tell me to kick rocks, but
That is what
and they
will
may. But at least I think we have an obligation based on the board's direction to try. And so I'm willing and we'll do it based on direction.
Well, to be clear, that's not my direction. Is whatever Teachers College recommends and you recommend as educators. I'm not here to tell you how to do a training. That's not my expertise by any means.
I want to at least exhaust all alternatives based on what we spent a lot of time discussing this. So I want to make sure that we exhaust all alternatives that you've asked us to do. Now, and I'll report back as soon as possible. If Teachers College says no, then I'll let you know right away that the answer is no. But the feedback I've received, and I'm trying to be responsive to your request, is that you would like us to at least explore different options with them. If they come back and yes, Dr. Marble, I've worked with them, you've worked with them. And the potential of them saying no, here's our model,
is exceptionally high.
But I think we owe it to the board and the public who's been with us now for this entire conversation to at least ask and explore it.
I'm just trying to get the yes to support you.
Getting a yes is good.
So the total information on the total cost, at least I know. So then I can say I voted yes and I knew what it was going to cost. That's all I need to get the yes. The other risks, the 4-day, 2-day, whatever, that's for the expert, right? The tell us whether the vendor will let us wait until May 9th or whatever to make a decision. That's for you to find out. And if you can get to that point, maybe also you have time to run some boxcar numbers by Wednesday. And then there's enough for my yes, because I know how much. That's my thing. I have to know how much with more certainty.
That's fair.
And the rest is up to you. I care, but we hired you. I don't distrust you the day you walked in the door when we hired you, so, okay, that's where I am.
I understand.
Did we have in the presentation that number, if we were paying per diem, what the max cost would be?
We did.
So I believe that number has been calculated already. The other one that we had talked about was childcare.
Yes.
So then we do know numbers outside of.
We do.
But I don't think, so yes, and I don't think we've put it all in one package for the full board to act on. And that's the feedback I think we're receiving and is fair. But yes, Dr. Marble and Ms. Ebert and I felt it was important for you to at least have a ballpark number of what per diem would cost, because we've always felt that per diem was the right direction. We just, when you're an administrator, you operate within a certain budget constraint, and that's what we were operating with then.
And I'll just say, you could come back and say, like, we just can't swing per diem, but we could do 2/3. Like, we can do better, right? I am fine with us moving towards better. I want our approach to always be what's one step better, whether it's the training, whether it's the money, whether it's our approach to leadership development, et cetera. And I think, Mr. Dillman, you hit the nail on the head. The best way to get a ton of people to sign up next year is to run an awesome program this year, which I think Teachers College can do. People generally leave this training feeling very inspired and prepared. And when you feel prepared, you feel better going in, and the kids feel that. So that all feels good to me. I think to Mr. Meyer's point, which is really astute, if you find out tomorrow that May 9th is not even on the table and you have the majority of the board coming together for another meeting, and you could bring something back to say, like, if we wait that long, we're going to lose these dates, and that means nobody gets trained this summer, that may make folks feel a little differently.
And then you can say, specifically contractually, we're agreeing to X dollars with it, and we foresee conceptually the total program cost to go to Y dollars. That's what you're voting yes on. That's what I'm hoping to get to. I'm not going to be offended if you all vote to not table and approve this tonight. I just have to have my voice for my perspective. That's where I am, and I'm one of the 7, and there's 6 others. So we do what we do, and I'm fine with it.
And ultimately, we would know the final cost will depend on how many teachers enroll, correct?
That's correct, yes. So the numbers are max made based on individuals that would be able to attend.
Right. All right, so we currently have a motion to table this. Is there any other discussion, or? Let's move forward with the vote. This is a vote to table this. I don't know that we got a date to table it to.
Well, I'll amend the motion to table, meaning we could pick it back up at any time after this meeting, correct?
That's what I understand, Mr. Myers.
I'm not sure about the Robert's Rules of Order wording, but the meaning is what? That we're tabling until
I'm actually I'm pretty certain that Robert's Rule says you have to table it to a date, but I could be corrected. I'm pretty sure that's.
But if we met again, we could modify that.
Could we agree to our next meeting?
Till our next meeting.
Or May 9th? Is that agreeable?
I'd like to amend the motion to table till the next meeting.
It's a friendly amendment. I support it as the second.
All right. Thank you. So that's the motion there. So if we approve this We'll be done with conversation tonight. If we don't, we'll go back to voting on the original resolution.
Can I just ask a
Yes, please.
So am I understanding correctly that if we table this and then Dr. Marble finds out we cannot move the dates, we have to decide by April 29th that this board is meeting again to discuss this? Correct.
This week, right? Probably. Is that what we're
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And then at that time, you'll have the best numbers you can have time to come up with to give us more clarity on what the boundaries of the cost might be. Not exact, but yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
So again, this motion to table it to our next meeting. Ms. Newman?
Ms. Braley?
Yes.
Dr. Haug?
Yes.
Dr. Jessup Banger?
No.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Ms. Moonfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
No.
Mr. Dolman?
No. Motion is tabled. Move on to the next item on our agenda.
Send the email now, Dr. Marble.
Next up is business services report, a monthly financial report.
Thank you. Mr. Dolman, just want to let the board know that we are that our overall revenue is above prior year trend, and that's primarily due to one-time federal stimulus payments and an increase in activity income. The expenditures are less than the prior year. Overall, we're tracking well. Our budget still seems to be in a good position, and it's been a challenging year with our budget, with a number of different hires. When you look at I think the most important chart, I believe, that I tend to go to right away is the interim statement of revenues and expenditures. That's on page 3-1, and it just shows the total revenues and other sources compared to the prior year and how things are moving in certain categories. And again, it shows that we're moving well as we ended the month of March.
Any more questions or comments for Dr. Means? Mr. Meyer?
I have a comment that is a contextual comment for the finances this year. There have been a lot of statements made that our enrollment is dropping. And I have a spreadsheet that I use to sort of eyeball it over 18 years that has increases and decreases of resident enrollment by grade level year over year. And I just this last night asked to confirm resident enrollment numbers for this year. And the resident enrollment for this year is not out of bounds with the low points over the past 18 years. And at those similar low points over the last 18 years, enrollment bounced back up, because things go up and down. We don't know right now whether we're in one of those downs before we're going to have an up, or whether we're going to have another down next year and have two downs in a row. So right now, the enrollment we have this year, to my look at it, is nothing unusual against the past 18 years. If we start to string 2 or 3 years of, straight line declines, that would be unusual. So my conclusion is, as we're figuring out these things about, do we spend any more fund balance like for these per diem things or something like that? I don't see a fall in enrollment yet. But we do have to have a good year next year. Thank you.
Any other board questions or comments for Dr. Means? All right, moving on, our strategic planning update under superintendent reports.
Thank you, President Dolman, board members, community members. I'm so excited to tell you that tomorrow is our first steering committee meeting for our strategic planning process. I think a lot of what we discussed in the room this evening, all of you individually have shared with me would be guided in a much more directed way with a strong strategic plan. And so I'm just excited about the opportunity to work with 60 community members who were randomly selected to be part of our process. What they will do is they will start the process of looking at our needs and looking at their desires for the school system. They're going to look at a number of different data points, ranging from the surveys that community members completed in the fall during the superintendent listening sessions to the survey that was completed in February and March, where we had over 3,000 stakeholders complete. And we're getting trends on what the community is sharing with us in terms of what's important to them. There's four main areas. The first area is academic performance. And it's really important, and we'll talk about this tomorrow, it's really important for us in the district not to put a verb in front of these areas, because that's when you start trying to define the areas. So the first is academic performance. The second is social, emotional, and mental health has been identified as an area. The third is diversity and inclusion. And the words diversity and inclusion have emerged, not equity. And so I think that's really important for us to make sure that we're being diverse and inclusive with all of our students and all of our families and all of our staff members. And then the fourth area that has emerged is high quality staff. So those are the four major areas. What we're going to empower our steering committee to do starting tomorrow is to start figuring out, so what should the verb be in front of those four areas? What additional information do we need to create? Once the steering committee really formulates these four focus areas or more, because we also want to empower them to find maybe a fifth or sixth area, they're going to formulate it into a draft goal, if you will. And then that work will be presented to you, the board, where you, the board, you get to decide the final goals and what those goals should be. You get to decide the mission statement and the core values of our organization. That's really exciting. So sometime in May, we're going to look at some dates and see if we can have some strategic planning time dedicated just to that process. Once you identify the mission and core values and the goals, then you will send that work back to the steering committee for them to identify the objectives. How are we going to meet these goals? And then also to start the process of developing an action plan. It's our hope that we will start this process starting tomorrow, and it will be concluded by August 8th. August 8th is the date where we've circled the calendar and hope to have a draft of the strategic plan for you to act on. It's our hope that we can go into the new school year with a new 3-year, because the duration of a strategic plan should be 3 years. Anytime it goes beyond 3 years, it tends to be put on a shelf. So we want to look for a 3-year model and have you act on it. It will be exciting to kick off our new school year for the 22-23 school year with that very strong strategic focus. So I want to thank, we had over 300 stakeholders indicate that they wanted to be part of the steering committee. We had to go through a random process to select the 60 some odd stakeholders who will be part of that process. And they've dedicated a lot of time. We told them up front how much time this would be, and people have stepped up. They've already started asking for data and information, so they are well versed and informed to help our district to help their children, to help their community become the very best it can be. A lot of the things that we heard a few hours ago to start our meeting, I'm so optimistic and believe that through our community and through everyone having a voice that we'll be able to address those issues and more. So I just wanted to provide that update for the board. I'll take any questions if you have any.
Would you be able to, well, I know you'd be able to, could you provide the board a list of who ended up selected to serve, their intersectionalities? Are they parents? Are they, business members, teachers? Just because I'm sure it was tough to come up with a random group that's also representative.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for the August State date. That's great to know when it's going to be coming before us.
Ms. Meadville.
Thank you. Could I better understand? So the steering committee, will they have work groups, or is it just the steering committee and the board?
The steering committee will have work groups within their committee. I anticipate that within the steering committee, those 4 areas that are referenced of academic performance, social, emotional, mental health, high quality staff, and diversity and inclusion will be subgroups within the steering committee.
And then there'll be, how big of a group will that be, do you think?
So I have an activity structured for tomorrow night where it's called 4 Corners, and we'll have the 4 corners, and we'll allow people to select one of those 4 areas or a 5th or a 6th. And we want people to gravitate to their passion in terms of those 4 areas or more. How large each of those areas will be. We want to empower stakeholders to select the area that they're most informed about and passionate about. So I can't predict. It would be difficult to say there will be 12 in each group. I think what we want to do is have people gravitate to the ones, the area that they're most interested and passionate about.
Okay, just want to make sure I understand. So the steering committee group will be split up into 4.
Yes.
Okay. And will there be any opportunities for the wider community to participate in this process? Because I've been asked about it. How do I participate in the steering, in the strategic planning process? And so will there be, will the steering committee meetings be posted so that they're, anything like that? How do you envision that working?
We'll have a landing page on the website where individuals can watch the work of the steering committee.
So just notes or just notes? Just note taking?
They're always welcome to come and observe the meetings as well.
Okay, so dates will be posted, and so it will really just be the steering committee and the board. So outside of the how many people are on
60.
Okay.
Yes. Which is a fairly large steering
it's fairly
committee.
large.
And we try to be as inclusive as possible.
But there will be some, individuals who will want to participate in some way. And of course, we want to be inclusive.
Absolutely.
So we have to figure out a way to do that.
Yes.
Any board questions for Dr. Means, comments?
I'm curious if any of the student school board members have any thoughts on the strategic plan in terms of like those topics or anything you're surprised wasn't on that list, or are there students in those groups, Dr. Means, as well?
Oh, yes. Yes.
I know it's late. You're like, I have homework to do. Like, y'all stop talking.
I just want to thank Dr. Means for doing this process. And I think that's another great opportunity for our community to be involved and to use their voice. There's many ways to use your voice in the community, and this is one of them. So thank you for doing that.
You've got some really fine people. Of course, they're all fine, but I'm looking at a few of the names. They're very knowledgeable people
we're very excited about our steering committee.
All right, moving on to our next superintendent report, update from our legislative advocacy committee. Dr. Jessica.
So, Legislative Advocacy Committee, we are in the process of rebooting. So kind of as we look forward, and really the focus is at this point, working with Dr. Means and the leadership team to examine and understand what are the needs of our school district to be able to use as a strategic plan of the things that we want to do and the supports that we want to have for teachers. What are the interventions we want in place to succeed and thrive as a district? And to fully understand what we believe that we need. And then as we examine and explore the budget process, which is a biennial process, coming up more quickly than we, I think, would like, of what do we need to be able to communicate with our legislators? Of here's the resources in Wauwatosa that we need to be successful, to deliver for our community and for our students, to support our staff, to be able to have the outcomes that as a community we want to have. And so that is at our core, I think, what we are trying to do, to basically backward map what is our ideal state, what resources do we need to achieve that ideal state, and how do we make sure that our legislators understand the gap that exists between the now and the desired state. So, Dr. Wing, does that, and Ms. Fraley, does that capture kind of the key? So to that end, as the district team is working on that, we will be working on engaging the community more broadly and rebuilding the legislative advocacy team so that there's representation from all schools, from across the community, and that we are able to work collaboratively and cohesively as a full community to be able to both educate and to advocate for the needs of Wauwatosa schools going forward. So that is kind of step one and then step two.
Thank you, Dr. Jessica. Any questions from the board? Thoughts? Hearing none, we'll move on to our final item, which is final public comment on items that are either on the agenda or not. Let's start with those in the room. If you want to come forward, you're free to. I'm sorry, Ms. Fraley.
Can I do a non-agenda item too? Whenever you want.
That's fine. Go ahead.
We're hearing a lot about all the things that are going wrong. And I will admit, a little worn down, and went this afternoon and I carved out an hour to go see the Tosa West APSI team and was so enthralled, I canceled my next meeting. And then I debated canceling my meeting after that, but I really had to go. And it was such an incredible reminder of what our potential is in this district. And both teams made it to nationals, East and West. West made it into the top 12 in the nation. They were being questioned by federal judges, by constitutional lawyers. These kids were incredible. The support they received from community members was incredible. Their support of one another. It was the best sort of shot in the arm ever. And Dr. Means, I feel like you have been so positive amongst the daily just beat down, quite frankly. And you continue to stay so positive. So thank you for that. And would just like to shout out both the coaches at Tosa East, Taylor McDaniel, the coach at Tosa West, Chad Mateski, and all the kids, especially these Tosa West kids who just performed like unbelievably well today. So I do hope we can honor those teams for going to national, and Tosa West will find out tomorrow if they placed, and I would not be surprised if they did really, really well. So I just want to end on something positive.
We'll be sure to have them, honor them in the future agenda.
Yeah, that would be great.
All right, to public comment on items that are either on the agenda or not, please come forward. State your name and address. You have 3 minutes.
Troy Seaver, 4556 North 107. I want to ask a question real quick for my comment because it sounds a little muffled over there, and I didn't realize there was closed caption over us, so I would have read it because it's hard for me to hear when it's muffled. But Sharon, going back, you said that there was a grant for the school board, or for the, sorry, a grant for the yearbooks?
No, there wasn't a grant.
So then how were the yearbooks paid for?
Students pay for them.
The students themselves pay the $44,000 for that? Okay. And then last but not leastly, I know on your agenda next month is who's going to be in what positions in this board. I think it's very important for us as a Tulsa community right now to have confidence in this board, which a lot of us have felt has been lacking. One of the things that obviously has been talked about a lot is transparency and accountability. I believe that the school board and us as parents need to be made whole. And I think that the one person that I believe that would make a great president for the school board is Mike Meyer. The reason I believe that is because me and Mike haven't always gotten along or agreed on everything, but we've always been able to talk about things. I find him always been a man who says what he means and means what he says. I believe that he will bring accountability and transparency back to the school board, which we definitely need and we are asking for you to be accountable. Not just talk about the good things that you do, but be willing to admit to the bad things that you do. And we can move on from that. Because when you tell the truth, it's easier to move on from that than when you hold things from people and they find out about them later, because then they've already lost trust in you. So I believe that he can bring the trust back that we have or want to have for this board. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment from those in the room? And if you're online, please raise your hand and we'll get to you next.
Julie Alexander, 7224 West State Street, Unit 1A, Wauwatosa. Two comments. First off, I'm hoping that as the people have been selected for the strategic plan, that diversity is included in those selections so that we are actually exercising some of the four principles that we've talked about so far. And also I'm hoping that when a new leadership board is elected, that we have transparency, truthfulness, and a great board. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jamie, is there anyone online?
There are no hands raised.
May I have a motion to adjourn to? Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Go ahead. No, that's all right. My mistake.
I will my squeaky wheels and I can get your best. So I had originally planned to come here tonight and talk about the Abbott Police report. But when all of the events of last week took place, they kind of rose to the top of my levels of concern. But I feel like I'd be remiss tonight if I didn't bring this up. The minds of a lot of people. And I want to echo, it's hard to follow Troy because he said it really well. Just having some culpability or owning some of that culpability would have gone a long way for the parents, and we didn't receive that. And included in the report, there were lines that, quote, a legal opinion was sought and obtained, yet it was ignored for over 2 years. The report also said, quote, some of the members of the board willingly ignored the conflict of interest with Abbott and Kristen Bowers. And many of us just want acknowledgement of the situation. It would have gone a long way, as I said. And I think transparency is important to all of us. And, you know, I want to thank Mr. Meyer. I've heard him referred to as a watchdog, which I think is an ironic title, I think it's important to be able to talk about these things and have these conversations. And I know that it took an hour and however long to talk about the last item on the agenda tonight, but it's important. And I don't want to see you overcorrect because of what happened with Abbott, but it just would have been nice to have had a little bit of accountability. And I don't feel like the statements that came in the police report out of the district provided that to us. On another note, I do really want to thank Dr. Means for hosting the listening sessions at West for the principal. I was really disappointed that there were 12 total people there on the 2 nights. One was me and one was my husband. It's disappointing that more people don't get involved because you can't complain into the wind. And so maybe people may say things about me because I say something, but at least I show up. And I appreciate the opportunities that we're given. I'm really excited for a new principal to come along. It's going to be challenging, but I know you'll find a great person. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Doman, someone has raised their hand now, so.
Next, we have someone that came to the mic here. Go ahead, and then we'll go to the person online.
Mike Sylvester, 2466 North 86th Street. I, like a lot of parents here, shared similar concerns expressed earlier. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. One will be attending McKinley next year and in the future possibly going to West. My concern now after today is that there's at best a 65% chance that his teacher at McKinley will have what you guys stated, the necessary training in order to teach the curriculum that you put forth. And I really encourage you to use your powers of leadership to get those teachers engaged. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room before we move to online? Close public comment for those in the room. Jamie, go ahead online.
Okay, Kyle Kakemo, you have the microphone. Please state your name and address.
Hello, my name is Kyle Carcamo. I live at 107th Street in Burleigh and Townsend here in Wauwatosa. I'm actually an SEA for Eisenhower Elementary School. And I had just this morning had woken up, gone to work and seen a bit of what had unfolded at West. And I also work in my full time as a representative for Zero Eyes. It's a gun detection software and proactive security measure. I would love to get in contact with somebody, send some emails. I'd sent an email to Laura Geisler in the school district regarding an opportunity to implement a safety permit or a safety measure and be able to share that information with you guys and able to kind of take a next step that's not as far as metal detectors or extra security at the school, but something that can be used to actively search for weapons or firearms that a student may bring in. I know that there's a lot of concern in the community as far as who and what is coming into our buildings, and I believe Zero Eyes is a perfect step in the right direction to bring a lot of that worry down. So I'd love to send an email out to anybody who's interested in hearing what that looks like and how that proactive security measure can benefit Wauwatosa School District.
Jamie, is there anyone else online?
No, there are no more hands raised.
All right, we'll close public comment for the evening. May I have a motion to adjourn into in-service for discussion of board roles and officer opportunities? This is a working session of the board. No public comment will be entertained at this session.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Newman, please call the roll.
Ms. Fraley?
Yes.
Dr. Hogg?
We'll work on it.
Dr. Jessup Banger?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Ms. Meadville?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Doman?
Yes.